Chapter 3974. What about the weapon evolution you just mentioned? Linny continued to ask. Weapon evolution is completely different. Not only is the process extremely complicated, but it's also extremely difficult. The requirements for materials are also extremely high. After a high-intensity smelting reaction, the weapon and the material will be completely integrated. Basically, it's like a rebirth. The final weapon will be completely different from the original in both shape and ability, and its power will be at least 10 times, 100 times, or even 1,000 times greater than the original. King of Junk said with burning eyes. I see. In that case, the correct explanation should be that ordinary weapons can't evolve. It's not the rumor that they can't be upgraded. The outside world has been confused by this general concept. Linny nodded and said, That's right. Unless you find a rare treasure like the 1,000-year tree crystal, ordinary weapons can't evolve at all. Because without the protection of the characteristics of the 1,000-year tree crystal, it's difficult for them to withstand the high-intensity smelting reaction. Maybe they'll turn into ashes halfway. There are countless examples of such failures. King of Junk sighed. The 1,000-year tree crystal can be used to evolve weapons. So that's its use. I've learned a lot. Lin-E cupped his hands at King of Junk. The Garbage King, on the other hand, looked at Lin-E with fire in his eyes. Brother Lin, I'll be honest with you. My biggest wish in this life is to forge a weapon that's unrivaled in the world, but without you, I wouldn't be able to see such a rare treasure in this life. I wouldn't even have the chance to forge a weapon with it. You're my savior, my savior. Seeing that, King of Junk knelt down to him without saying anything. Linny hurriedly pulled him back and said emotionally, Brother Wong, what are you doing? You promised to forge weapons for me unconditionally. I'm grateful to you. Why are you kneeling down to me? What the hell is this? If you do this again, I won't dare to ask you for help. No, no, no. You have to ask me for help. You have to ask me for help. I'm the only one who can use such supreme materials in the North Island. No one else can do it. King of Junk hurriedly got up and said. This guy's tone was still as big as ever. Linny laughed in his heart. But after this period of contact, he didn't doubt the King of Junk's ability anymore. It could only be said that all experts had their own pride. At least in the path of forging, the King of Junk's pride wasn't groundless. As for the rumor that he didn't succeed in forging weapons, from Lin Yi's point of view, it was either because he disdained ordinary weapons, or because he really lacked the materials. Moreover, no one believed him at all. Then, what should we do to make perfect use of these materials and not waste them? Brother Wong, didn't you just say that these materials are far from enough? Lin Yi returned to the main topic. King of Junk didn't answer him immediately. Instead, he turned around and took out a piece of white paper from the corner of the cave. After writing a series of things on it, he handed it to Linny and said, I've thought about it carefully just now. Brother Lin, it's rare for you to get such top materials as the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal. Instead of dealing with them carelessly, it's better to make a big one. What do you think, Brother Lin? Lin Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. King of Junk's idea was exactly what he wanted. He immediately asked, I think so too. But how to make a big one? I've listed a total of 7 materials on this piece of paper. Only after gathering these 7 materials and cooperating with each other can the effect of the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal be fully exerted. At that time, we can melt the fine steel staff in the furnace, and it will definitely be reborn and become a generation of magic weapons. King of Junk vowed solemnly. Upon hearing this, Linny roughly glanced at the 7 casting materials listed on the white paper. They were all things that he had never seen or heard of before. Among them, the only one that he had a slight impression of was called the mysterious water droplet. I've seen this mysterious water droplet in the Hong Chamber of Commerce before. It's priced at 600 or 700 spiritual jade. I've never seen or heard of any of the others. Linny pondered and said. King of Junk nodded and said, although these 7 materials are only used as auxiliary materials, they can be used with the ancient Pure Land and the 10,000-year tree crystal. Even the auxiliary materials are not cheap. The mysterious water droplet is one of the easiest to buy. As for the other 6, it's not usually available. Even a top chamber of commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce may not have such a stock. Then where can we find them? Lin Yi could not help but be stunned. If he could not even buy them in the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he might not be able to find all of them in his lifetime. It's obviously unrealistic to find these things by ourselves. We can only pin our hopes on the auction. It just so happens that as far as I know, next month will be the semi-annual North Island auction. Except for the legendary items like the 10,000-year tree crystal, you should have a chance to see most of the treasures. Brother Lin, why don't you give it a try? But how to get the qualification to enter the auction is a big problem. King of Junk scratched his head in distress. Is it difficult to get the qualification to enter the auction? Will the spiritual jade card work? Lin Yi showed the spiritual jade card in his hand. This was the symbol of his status. Since he could freely enter and exit the inner street, he should be able to enter the auction too, right? Brother Lin, you're really not an ordinary person. You even have this kind of thing. Looking at the spiritual jade card, King of Junk could not help swallowing his saliva. A poor cultivator like him, who lived at the bottom of society, could never get a spiritual jade card in his lifetime. However, King of Junk immediately shook his head and said, I don't know the specific situation, but the auction isn't just held by the Chamber of Commerce in the inner street. It's an alliance of all the top forces in the North Island. It's said that even some big shots in the Middle Island are involved. The people who enter and exit are all extraordinary, so a spiritual jade card may not work. I can't help you with this kind of thing. You can only rely on yourself, Brother Lin. I see. Then I'll find someone to inquire about it later. Lin Yi nodded. It was really difficult to count on King of Junk for this kind of thing. It was good enough that he could provide information. He still had to rely on Lin Yi. Well, there are many good things at the auction, but the competition is fierce. If you want to buy all 7 kinds of materials, you'll probably have to spend thousands of spiritual jade, or even tens of thousands if you're unlucky. Brother Lin, you have to be mentally prepared. However, since you have a 10,000-year-old tree crystal, you don't need this 1,000-year-old tree crystal. You can sell it at the auction for a lot of spiritual jade, King of Junk suggested. I know. By the way, there's one more thing I want you to see if it's a casting material, Lin Yi suddenly said. Chapter 39-75. *T, Brother Lin. Don't tell me you got some rare ancient treasure again. My heart can't stand such a big shock. King of Junk said in surprise, but he couldn't help poking his head over and picking up a bit of blood-red gravel to observe it carefully. After a while, King of Junk shook his head helplessly. I don't know this thing. It shouldn't be used for forging, otherwise I have no reason not to recognize it. But even so, I can see that it's definitely a good thing. Brother Lin, you can take it to the auction and let someone appraise it. Then you should know. Lin Yi wasn't too surprised. It was normal that the Garbage King couldn't recognize something that even this damned thing couldn't recognize. He'd thought that it was some kind of crafting material, but it seemed like he was wrong. After that, the two talked about weaponsmithing for a bit. The King of Garbage's extraordinary knowledge in this area was quite an eye-opener. According to King of Junk himself, this was just the result of Sun Sikong's casual guidance for a few days. Lin Yi couldn't help but be secretly shocked. The cultivation world was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Brother Lin, I'll leave the 7 materials to you. I can't help much in this aspect, but I can take this time to do some preparation work. After all, forging a magic weapon is a big event. There can't be any mistakes. King of Junk solemnly said to Lin Yi, Then I'll leave Brother Wong to trouble you. I'll leave first. Brother Wong, wait for my news. Lin Yi immediately stood up and said goodbye. It was not too late when he left the cave. Lin Yi immediately left for the marketplace. Naturally, his purpose was to go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to ask Hong Zhong about the auction. However, Lin Yi didn't go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce directly. Instead, he went to find Chen Heihu. It had been some time since he came here last time. He wanted to see if there was any news about the heart-devouring exquisite grass. The answer he got from Chen Heihu disappointed Lin Yi a little. Chen Heihu had spread the news of buying the heart-devouring exquisite grass to all his contacts, but there was still no news so far. It could be seen that the heart-devouring exquisite grass was indeed rare. It was already very lucky that he could find it in the periphery of the back mountain and among the spiritual medicine seeds distributed by Lingyu Hall. Fortunately, the east wasn't bright, and the west was bright. There was no news from Chenhehu. After all, Linny had asked Hongzhong for help back then. As soon as Linny stepped into the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hongzhong, who was patrolling downstairs, came up and led him to a private room on the second floor, and said, "Hero Lin, you asked me to help you buy the heart-devouring exquisite grass last time. Now, I have got two. I'll ask someone to pack it for you." Linny was overjoyed when he heard that. He said gratefully, "Thank you so much, Manager Hong. What's the price?" "Haha, then 100 spiritual jades for one. What do you think, Hero Lin?" Hong Zhong smiled and said while stroking his beard. Lin Yi's heart moved. He knew that Hong Zhong was doing him a favor again. If it was an ordinary spiritual medicine, it could be bought with a few spiritual jades. 100 spiritual jades was considered a heaven-grade spiritual jades. However, the rarer something was, the greater its value. With the rarity of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, 100 spiritual jades for one was practically half selling and half giving away. He probably did not buy it at such a low price. Linny was not in a hurry to answer. He passed the white paper that King of Rags wrote to him to Hong Zhong and said, "Manager Hong, other than the matter of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, the other reason I came here is to buy the items on this list. I wonder if the Chamber of Commerce has them in stock?" "Oh, Hero Lin, please wait for a moment. I'll get someone to check." Hong Zhong gestured for Lin Yi to drink his tea and instructed the manservant at the door. After a while, the manservant reported, "Out of the 7 materials, our Chamber of Commerce has only the mysterious droplet in stock at the moment. The price is 649 spiritual jades. We don't have the other 6. Sure enough, Linny had already expected this, so he didn't feel regretful. He immediately said, "Then, pack up this mysterious water drop and the 2 heart-devouring exquisite grass for me. It's a total of 1,000 spirit jades. Is that all right, shopkeeper Hong?" Hong Zhong immediately smiled and waved his hand. "Hero Lin, you must be joking. I know you mean well. However, business is business. Since I said 1 heart-devouring exquisite grass is 100 spiritual jades, I won't charge you half a piece more. Otherwise, where is the integrity of a businessman? If people find out, who would dare to do business with the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the future?" Linny knew he had said something wrong, so he could only say, "All right then, I'll use the extra spiritual jades to buy spiritual medicine. Is that okay?" Linny never liked to owe people favors. Since Hong Zhong was not willing to charge more spiritual jades, he might as well go back and refine some medicinal pills. Next time, he would bring a few top-grade foundation establishment pills for him. At that time, Hong Zhong would definitely be more than happy and would not refuse him like this. Hong Zhong seemed to have seen through Lin Yi's plan. He smiled knowingly and said, "Then I'll thank Hero Lin for your care. If Hero Lin is not in a hurry, I can also get someone to keep an eye on the remaining 6 materials for you. Just like the heart-devouring exquisite grass, after a period of time, you might get something." "Thank you, Manager Hong. However, I heard that there will be an auction on the North Island next month?" Linny asked tentatively. Hong Zhong immediately understood and nodded. "Yes, the level of this auction is not low. Hero Lin, you should be able to find the things you want there. Are you interested in going to have a look?" "Yes, I'm just worried about how to get the qualification to enter. I wonder if Manager Hong can help me?" Linny said immediately. Hong Zhong could not help but smile and said, "Hero Lin, you don't have to worry. Although the qualification to enter the North Island auction is very rare, and ordinary people can't enter unless they are a powerful force, but fortunately, our Hong Chamber of Commerce is also one of the sponsors of the auction, so we naturally have the qualification to bring extra people to enter. If it's convenient for Hero Lin, how about coming with me?" Linny could not help but be overjoyed. Before coming here, he thought he would have to spend a lot of effort to get the qualification, but he did not expect that Hong Zhong would easily solve it for him with a simple sentence. Things like connections were really priceless at critical times. "Thank you, Manager Hong," Linny said gratefully. Chapter 3976. It had to be said that Hong Zhong's position as the manager of the branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce was not for nothing. He had done a great favor for others, but he never claimed credit for it. Instead, he spoke of it so casually that it made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. As long as one wasn't an ungrateful person, they would definitely remember such a favor. Moreover, they would remember it willingly and without the slightest bit of discomfort. Over time, they would naturally form a huge and reliable network. The more friends, the more options. This was definitely a golden saying in the cultivation world, and it was even more so for a businessman like Hong Zhong who relied on his connections to make a living. It could only be said that people like Hong Zhong, no matter what they did, would definitely be able to achieve great things in the end. Strength was only one aspect, but his character and wisdom in dealing with people were also indispensable. Many times, it was even more useful than great strength. Lin Yi could not help but deeply feel that being on good terms with a person like Hong Zhong would definitely be of great benefit to his future development. I am already very grateful for your help, Manager Hong. How can I be insatiable and borrow spiritual jades from you? Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, Actually, the reason why I brought so many elixir materials back this time is because I'm preparing to start refining elixirs. I'll bring them over and sell them to you, Manager Hong. I believe it should be enough for the auction. That's great. Then I will wait and see young hero Lin's work. Hong Zhong's eyes lit up and he nodded approvingly. After saying goodbye to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi did not stay outside for long and immediately returned home. He could only put aside the matter of forging for the time being. Now that he had two heart-devouring exquisite grasses in his hands, it was naturally more important to first refine the foundation establishment pill. Strictly speaking, it had not been long since Lin Yi advanced to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Before he completely stabilized his strength, even if he had the foundation establishment pill, he would not use it for the time being. After all, haste makes waste, and this would easily cause side effects. Therefore, at least in a short period of time, Lin Yi still didn't need the foundation building pills, but it was better to be prepared. Currently, Lin Yi was only in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, and in the future, he would stay in the foundation building realm for a long time. For him, the more foundation building pills, the better, and there was no reason to complain about having too many. After an uneventful night, Lin Yi was already very familiar with alchemy. With the help of the divine armament cauldron, there were basically no mistakes. This time was the same. Lin Yi had thought that it would at least be the same as last time. After all, these two heart-devouring exquisite grasses were harvested from the wild by others this time. Unlike those cultivated in batches in the spirit medicine nursery, which had congenital defects, the quality of the heart-devouring exquisite grasses was slightly better than the previous one. However, the reality was that only two foundation establishment pills were successfully refined in the end. But in the cauldron, Lin Yi found two other useless pills, which meant that if everything went smoothly, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to use them. This time, he should have been able to refine 4 foundation-building pills in one go, but he didn't expect that half of them would fail prematurely, causing him to sigh helplessly. This was something that couldn't be helped. No alchemist could maintain a 100% success rate. Even with the help of the divine armament cauldron, Lin Yi was no exception. It was inevitable that there would be waste pills. In addition to sighing with regret, he could only helplessly accept the reality. Lin Yi was not greedy. He was already very satisfied that he could refine 2 foundation establishment pills this time. As for whether these 2 pills would be enough for him to reach the peak of the middle stage of foundation establishment in the future, he could only wait until the future. If it was not enough, as long as Hong Zhong and Qin Heihu continued to help him, with the influence of these 2 people, Lin Yi believed that he would have the opportunity to purchase the heart-devouring exquisite grasses again in the future. As long as he had the heart-devouring exquisite grasses, the foundation establishment pills would naturally not be a problem. However, the waste pills were not completely useless. This waste foundation establishment pill had similar effects as the foundation establishment pill. It could allow people who did not build the foundation to successfully build the foundation, and the effect was better than the foundation establishment pill. After slightly adjusting his state, Lin Yi quickly prepared to refine pills again. This time, He was preparing to refine the foundation establishment barrier-breaking pill. Other than keeping a few for his own use, Lin planned to sell most of the foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, according to the previous agreement. In this way, not only could he return a favor to Hong Zhong, but he could also raise a large amount of spirit jade to prepare for the auction, killing two birds with one stone. However, before Lin could reopen the furnace again, the restriction outside the cave house was touched, and Lin had to temporarily stop. Opening the door of the cave house, looking at the familiar old faces in front of him, Lin couldn't help but smile. Hee hee, what kind of wind is blowing today? What can I do for you guys? At this moment, standing in front of the door of the cave house was impressively Su Lingchong, Kong Mingming, and Zhong Pingliang's group. Putting aside Lin Yi's identity, these people in front of him were currently Lin Yi's biggest enemies, especially after he had lost a capable subordinate like Meng Jueguang for nothing. This young master Su Lingchong probably couldn't wait to quickly crush Lin Yi to death. At this moment, he had brought people to publicly knock on the door. What was the meaning of this? No matter what, it was still broad daylight, and some of the alarmed Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers were still watching from afar. Lin Yi predicted that even if the other party had 10 times the guts, they would definitely not dare to come knocking on his door in this kind of situation. Seeing that not only was Lin Yi not afraid, but instead had a carefree and condescending attitude, Su Lingchong's chest immediately felt stifled. This time, he indeed didn't plan to play hard with Lin Yi, but in the end, he still wanted to put on a show of strength to suppress the scene. It would be best if he could scare Lin Yi to the point of pissing his pants in front of everyone, making him lose all face in front of everyone, and from then on, he wouldn't have the face to see anyone. So, this time, Su Lingchong personally released a strong aura, unreservedly the full circle of foundation establishment. Such a terrifying aura was completely revealed, and if people like Kong Mingming and the others weren't hiding behind him, they would have long been unable to bear the pressure and directly kneel down. However, at this moment, standing in front of him, only 2 steps away from him, Lin Yi was as calm as the clouds and wind, as if nothing had happened, and this was really out of Su Lingchong's expectations. To be honest, if Lin Yi only had the strength of the early stage of foundation establishment, facing such a strong aura from the other party, there was really a possibility that he wouldn't be able to bear it. However, he was already an out-and-out mid-stage foundation establishment expert, and in addition to his own tenacity, his strength was also far above ordinary experts of the same level. If he couldn't even bear this little bit of aura from the other party, then what the hell was he supposed to do in the future? Chapter 39:77. Su Lingchong's face darkened as he was mocked by a newcomer like Lin Yi. Next to him, Kong Mingming quickly jumped out and said, "Consider my ass. You're just a poor rogue cultivator. You're not even qualified to lick young Master Su's toes. How can you be a security guard?" T. Lin Yi laughed. "It doesn't matter if I'm qualified or not. I don't have the hobby of licking other people's toes. But you, Great Deacon Kong, are definitely qualified, right? Otherwise, how could you become someone's follower?" Kong Xiaoming choked and couldn't say anything for a while. Although everyone wanted to lick Master Su's toes, practitioners had their own pride. If he were to say something like that, how would he be able to show his face in the Welcome Pavilion in the future? Seeing that Great Deacon Kong is so energetic, your injury should be almost healed. Just in time. The 10 days that Pavilion Master who mentioned last time are almost up. Can you quickly vacate your cave abode number 1 on the top of the mountain? I'm still waiting to exchange with the other newcomers of the Rising Sky Pavilion. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said. Kong Ming's face suddenly stiffened again. He thought to himself, damn it, this situation is not right. I was obviously following young Master Su to show off. Why did Lin Yi turn the tables with just a few words? In fact, because of his injury, Hu Yunfeng had given him a 4th-grade recover pill. Under the powerful effect of the pill, Kong Mingming's injury had almost recovered a few days ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to go to Morongjin, that slut, and make love day and night. These days, Kong Mingming had been deliberately putting this matter at the back of his mind. He didn't even greet Su Lingchong, his backer. He didn't expect that Lin Yi would expose it in front of Su Lingchong. How would this end? Sure enough, Su Lingchong immediately looked at Kong Mingming suspiciously and asked, Zhao Ming, you want to give him the cave abode #1 on the top of the mountain? What's going on? Recently, Su Lingchong had been busy competing with the South Heaven Gate for the position of the first senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Recently, he had finally made some progress, but immediately, Meng Jueguang's matter appeared. In addition, he had to preside over the Shangguan Laner's birthday party, so he had no time to take care of the small matters in Ingxin Pavilion. In addition, Kong Mingming didn't take the initiative to confess to him, and Hu Yunfeng didn't give Kong Mingming face, so Su Lingchong didn't know anything about the Interpavilion challenge. Kong Mingming stammered, unable to speak for a long time. Lin Yi saw this and chuckled, saying on his behalf, so young Master Su still doesn't know. Great Deacon Kong purposely concealed military intelligence. It's a bit unjustifiable to be a follower. Well, since Great Deacon Kong is too embarrassed to say it, then I will say it for you. Young Master Su, he lost the #1 cave abode on the mountaintop to me during the Cross Pavilion Challenge. According to what Pavilion Lord who said at that time, now that 10 days have passed, he naturally has to give up the cave abode to me. I can't let Pavilion Master Hu go back on his words, right? There's such a thing? Humph, disappointing thing. I'll deal with you when we get back. Su Lingchong's face couldn't help but turn gloomy. It wasn't that he didn't understand why Kong Mingming couldn't beat Lin Yi, but the thing that pissed him off the most was that Kong Xiaoming dared to hide it from him. This was intolerable. As a superior, there was one thing that Su Lingchong hated and hated the most. It was his subordinates concealing military intelligence on their own, because this would cause the situation to get out of his control, and it would be very easy to end up like what was happening now. Lin Yi inexplicably took the initiative. Yes, young Master Su, please calm down. I know I'm wrong. Kong Mingming quickly nodded and bowed, pretending to be sad as he explained. Young Master Su, you have many matters to attend to. I also don't want to trouble young Master Su because of such a small matter. As a younger brother, I can't share young Master Su's worries, but instead, I've caused trouble for young Master Su. I really don't have the face to open this mouth, so no matter how great the grievance is, I can only swallow it first and talk about it in the future. Kong Mingming was really a master of acting. At that time, he concealed the information because he had selfish motives and didn't want to lose points in front of his master, but he was made into a tragic character who shouldered all the grievances. Even a smart person like Su Lingchong was stunned by his words. In that case, I've blamed you wrongly. Based on Zhao Ming's rare kindness, I won't blame you. Su Lingchong stretched out his hand and patted Kong Mingming's shoulder, comforting him. You're an authentic pill master after all. It's not strange that you can't beat others. As long as you complete the task that I've assigned to you, you'll still have a great merit. Actually, did Su Lingchong really not know what was going on? Actually, not necessarily. It was just that he was better at winning people's hearts than Meng Jueguang. Yes, thank you for young Master Su's understanding. Zhao Ming dares not to give his all. Kong Mingming was moved to tears of gratitude, like a gentleman dying for a bosom friend. Looking at this scene, Lin Yi was secretly speechless. Kong Mingming was indeed an expert at flattering people. His flattery was watertight. Even someone like Su Lingchong fell for it. It seemed that this fellow didn't rely on pure luck to be where he was today. However, in Lin Yi's view, a smart fellow like Su Lingchong shouldn't be so easily deceived by Kong Mingming. Maybe he had the intention to create an image of a broad-minded master so that his subordinates would be more willing to serve him. Hence, he was just taking the opportunity to cooperate with the act. All right, don't be in such a hurry to act. My question just now, can Great Deacon Kong give me an accurate answer? Lin Yi had a mocking smile on his face as he interrupted them. Kong Mingming was originally feeling complacent, but he immediately became depressed. Once the 10 days were up, the first cave abode on the mountain peak would have to be given to Lin Yi. This was a problem that couldn't be avoided no matter what. However, this cave abode on the mountain peak not only meant superior spiritual energy conditions to Kong Mingming, but more importantly, it was a symbol of status. If Lin Yi occupied the cave abode for his own use, then it was fine. Kong Mingming would at most be embarrassed. However, If he did as Linny said and transferred the cave abode to another Soaring Sky Pavilion newcomer, then not only would he be embarrassed, but his position as the #1 newcomer in Soaring Sky Pavilion would also be threatened. Even Su Lingqiong, who was behind him, would be affected. Chapter 3978. With Su Lingqiong's status as the heir of the young master, even the slightest damage to his image was extremely likely to be fatal. If it was continuously publicized by people with ulterior motives, no matter how small it would become a huge matter that could even affect whether he could successfully ascend to the position in the future. Su Lingqiong understood this point even more deeply than Kong Mingming. He immediately threatened in a deep voice, "The #1 abode on the mountain peak. Besides Kong Mingming, I won't let it fall into the hands of anyone. No one. Linny, do you want to try?" Lin Yi instantly laughed. He wouldn't fall for this trick. He immediately raised his eyebrows and said, as expected of young Master Su, "How impressive. Unfortunately, this is the welcome pavilion. Young Master Su, what you say doesn't seem to count. Or is young Master Su going to overstep his authority and help pavilion manager who manage the newcomers under us?" "Humph, you have a sharp tongue." Su Lingqiong glared fiercely at Linny, then suddenly laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, I was only joking. Young hero Lin, do you need to be so nervous? Just as you said, this is Hu Yunfeng's territory. I naturally won't overstep my authority." "That's good. I thought young Master Su wanted to erase the spoils of war that I painstakingly won with just one sentence. If it fell into the ears of the higher-ups, wouldn't it be too inexcusable?" Lin Yi faintly smiled without fear. A person like Su Lingqiong, who had a deep background and a bright future, was perfect in all aspects to the point of being almost invulnerable. He indeed seemed to be an extremely powerful and terrifying opponent. However, he also had a huge weakness, which was that his ambition was too great. It was precisely because Su Lingqiong had great ambition that he had to care about his image, not to mention sending people to assassinate Lin Yi. Even a common small matter like suppressing newcomers couldn't be done because it would damage his glorious image. Otherwise, if he really had no scruples, with the disparity in strength and status, it would be impossible for Lin Yi to deal with him unscathed until today. Su Lingqiong's face stiffened. He could only say, "How can I make you give up the #1 abode on the mountain peak? Name a price." "You want me to name a price?" Lin Yi smiled meaningfully and said indifferently, "I'm sorry, I've already made an agreement with the other Soaring Sky Pavilion rookies. If I let Great Deacon Kong occupy the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain in the end, wouldn't it damage my reputation?" The meaning behind his words was clearly that he was ready to rip them off. Su Lingqiong disdained to argue with Lin Yi, who was a newcomer at the bottom, and he disliked the feeling of being manipulated by others even more. He immediately gave Kong Mingming a look, indicating that he should come forward to solve the problem. After all, he was the one who made the mistake. How could he let Su Lingqiong, the boss, personally clean up his mess? Kong Mingming could only bite the bullet and say, "As long as the conditions are right, nothing is impossible. Lin Yi, you should be very clear that the other Soaring Sky Pavilion rookies can't come up with better conditions than mine. Instead of letting those people benefit, it's better for you to benefit yourself, isn't it?" "Oh? What conditions did Great Deacon Kong prepare for me? Why don't you tell me?" Lin Yi said with great interest. Kong Mingming couldn't help but choke again. His weakness had fallen into Lin Yi's hands. He knew that he was definitely going to be ripped off today, and he couldn't escape. He could only say, "People die for wealth, and birds die for food. You just want spiritual jades, right? I'll give you 5 spiritual jades. How about it?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. 5 spiritual jades? The first cave mansion at the top of the mountain is only worth 5 spiritual jades in the eyes of Great Deacon Kong? Let me ask you, are you trying to get rid of a beggar? Then, 10 spiritual jades, that's a lot. Kong Mingming quickly said, "Not enough." Lin Yi raised his eyelids indifferently. 20 spiritual jades, not one more. Otherwise, you can go find other people. I want to see how much they can give you. Kong Mingming gritted his teeth and said, although the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain was good, the 1-year period given to the newcomers had already passed half a year ago. In other words, Kong Mingming's condition was equivalent to exchanging 20 spiritual jades for the right to use the first cave mansion at the top of the mountain for half a year. There was almost no better condition than this in the world. Of course, Kong Mingming was never a person who would suffer a loss for nothing. He dared to bid like this because he had seen the rumor that happened to Lin Yi before. The rumor that Lin Yi couldn't distinguish between good and bad jades, and was constantly being traded for good jades by Meng Tong and the others. The price of 20 good jades was definitely enough to make him die of heartache, but if they were exchanged for 20 bad jades, it would be no problem, and he could get them in minutes. Lin Yi was well aware of this. He sneered in his heart, and still said indifferently, "Great Deacon Kong, you really are a person of status. You are generous when you open your mouth. Unfortunately, I don't want your 20 spiritual jades at all." What the hell? Kong Mingming almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Lin Yi with a face of disbelief. What the hell is wrong with this guy's brain? He doesn't want 20 spiritual jades at all? Who the hell do you think you are? Could it be that this guy has already realized my bad intentions? Kong Mingming's heart was beating fast, and he said with a gloomy face, "Lin Yi, don't go too far. I advise you not to go too far." Don't go too far? I can't tell that Great Deacon Kong is quite reasonable. Unfortunately, you don't seem to have this awareness. Lin Yi curled his lips mockingly, and Kong Mingming was so embarrassed that his face turned purple. Then, he said, "Why don't I make it clear? I don't want the spiritual jades, but I want the spiritual herb seeds." As soon as these words came out, not only Kong Mingming, but even Su Lingchong was stunned. Putting 20 spiritual jades together with the spiritual herb seeds, any normal person would know which one to choose. Although the spiritual herb seeds had the hope of survival, unless it was in a professional place like the spiritual medicine nursery, the possibility of survival was very small. For most people, it was basically of little value. However, during the spiritual herb assessment, Lin Yi had once cultivated 39 spiritual herb seeds out of 40. No matter what methods he used, the spiritual herb seeds might really be a money-making machine in his hands. "How many spiritual herb seeds do you want?" Kong Mingming asked in a low voice. Lin Yi didn't want the spiritual jades, and instead asked for the spiritual herb seeds. To him, it wasn't a bad thing. Anyway, because of Su Lingchong's care, he had recently built a relationship with many people with power in the pill hall. Even if the spiritual flower manager of the spiritual medicine nursery was lukewarm to him because of the previous incident of slandering Lin Yi, if he only wanted to get some spiritual herb seeds, it wouldn't be a problem. Chapter 3979. The value was not high, so naturally, the security would not be too strict. Hence, for people like Kong Mingming who had connections, getting some spiritual medicine seeds was almost a piece of cake. It would be best if he could use them to get rid of Lin Yi. Just like the previous spiritual medicine assessment, 40 spiritual medicine seeds will form a group. "Give me 5 groups," Lin Yi said immediately. This was something that Lin Yi had thought about long ago. If he wanted the heart-devouring exquisite grass, other than looking for Hong Zhong and Chen He Hu to help him purchase it, the other way was to get the spiritual medicine nursery's spiritual medicine. It was a pity that he was not a member of the pill hall and did not have any reliable connections. It was obviously impossible for him to rely on himself. On the other hand, Kong Mingming had been doing very well in the pill hall under Su Lingchong's care. It was said that he had even reserved a position in the pill hall in advance. Once the welcoming pavilion was over, he could immediately join the pill hall. It was a good opportunity to get this idea from him. However, it was impossible for Lin Yi to directly ask for the heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds. In order to fool people, he could only do the same as the previous spiritual medicine assessment and ask for all 40 spiritual medicine seeds. Anyway, they could be used as spiritual medicine reserves in the future, so it would not be a waste to ask for more. 40 spiritual medicine seeds a group, and you want 5 groups? Are you crazy for the spiritual medicine seeds? Do you think that the pill hall is opened by my family, and you can take anything you want? Kong Mingming instantly jumped up. It was true that he had the connections to get the spiritual medicine seeds, but if Lin Yi wanted 5 groups, that would be a total of 200 spiritual medicine seeds. If this was discovered, it would be a big problem. After all, Kong Mingming was not an internal member of the Pill Hall. Even if others took care of him for Su Lingchong's sake, they would not put themselves in danger just to help him. Linny also knew that this was too unrealistic. However, when it came to transactions, one had to pay the price as high as one could. He immediately said, "Fine, then I will reluctantly take a step back. For groups." "Impossible." Kong Mingming refused again. It seemed that Linny had taken a step back, but there were still 160 pills in 4 groups, which was not a small number, and the risk was not small. Linny's expression immediately turned cold. He stretched out his hand to send them off and said, "If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Take care. Forgive me for not sending you off." "Wait, 3 groups. 3 groups at most. It's impossible to have more than that," Kong Mingming said quickly. In reality, even if the 3rd group had 120 spiritual herb seeds, they still had to take risks. But now that the initiative was in the hands of Lin Yi, there was nothing he could do. Moreover, behind him stood Su Lingchong, his master's backing. This time, Su Lingchong wasn't here to help him clean up his mess. If he didn't agree to Lin Yi's conditions and delayed Su Lingchong's proper business, then it wouldn't be justifiable. 3 groups? Lin Yi pondered for a moment and then said, "Then I still want the cave dwelling. For groups is my bottom line. Otherwise, there's no need to talk about it." Kong Mingming was just about to get angry, but Su Lingchong interrupted him impatiently and said to Lin Yi, "Okay, I will give you 4 groups. Don't mention this again in the future." "No problem. However, I will say the ugly words first. Send them to me before tomorrow's sunset. If you are late or any one of them is missing, this agreement will not be valid. At that time, the number 1 cave dwelling on the top of the mountain will have nothing to do with you, understand?" Lin Yi said, "It's a deal." Kong Mingming had to bite the bullet and agree. Although the time was a little tight, this matter was easy to handle since Su Lingchong came forward. With Su Lingchong's face, he didn't need to take any risks and he could get back the number 1 cave dwelling on the top of the mountain from Lin Yi. For Kong Mingming, this deal was already very worthwhile. There was no need to continue to dawdle like this. Otherwise, if he angered Lin Yi, he would be finished. "Then I will wait for Great Deacon Kang's good news." Lin Yi smiled faintly. 4 groups of elixir seeds meant that there were 4 seeds of the heart-devouring exquisite grass, which was already a rare surprise. At this time, Su Lingchong finally said, "Since the matter between you two is over, then I will talk about the purpose of this time's visit. Lin Yi, I heard that you once saved little junior sister Lan in the back mountain?" "Hee. Where did young Master Su hear this news?" Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Immediately, Lin Yi glanced meaningfully at Murong Zhen, who was watching from afar. He knew that this matter must have come from the mouth of this woman, and she must have changed her appearance. Otherwise, if she really told the truth, with Su Lingchong's position, it was impossible for him to let this sinister woman who wanted to kill Shangguan Laner go. He would have already killed her with a slap. Su Lingchong pretended to be profound as he smiled complacently. "In a place like the 3 Great Pavilions, as long as I want to know something, it's naturally as easy as flipping my hand. Looking at your performance, it should be true, right?" "So what?" Lin Yi asked noncommittally. Although he had the intention to help Shangguan Laner get rid of the threat of Murong Zhen, he had never planned to use Su Lingchong's hand. After all, he still did not know what Shangguan Laner would say about the matter of the Half-Moon Lake. If he said something wrong and was caught by others, that would not be good. Logically speaking, a newcomer like you is not qualified to have any interaction with a high and mighty little princess like little junior sister Lan. However, little junior sister Lan is a person who values friendship. Because of this matter, she feels that she owes you a favor. Of course, she also helped you in the law enforcement hall last time, so we should be even. Su Lingchong said in a condescending tone. That is also thanks to young Master Su. It seems that this favor will still fall on young Master Su's head in the future. Lin Yi replied with his eyes narrowed. Su Lingchong turned a deaf ear to this and pretended not to hear it. He continued, "Lin Yi, remember one thing for me. Little junior sister Lan is a high and mighty little princess. She is not someone that a small grassroot like you can touch. If you want to continue to live well, then stay as far away from her as possible. Do you understand what I mean? Linny smiled ambiguously, then looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot, and said lightly, Young Master Su mobilized so many people and came all the way here. Is it just to say this to me? Of course not. In order to cut off your poor and humble fantasy, so that you will not continue to harass little junior sister Lon with the small favor in the back mountain, I decided to make an exception and send you, a newcomer at the bottom, an invitation. Su Lingchong winked at Kong Mingming, who was next to him. Kong Mingming immediately handed an invitation to Lin Yi. Chapter 3980. Shangguan Laner's birthday was coming soon. This was something she once said to him. Linny was still having a headache about how to sneak in. He did not expect that this problem was actually solved by Su Lingchong, his nemesis. It was simply ridiculous. Yes, it is reasonable to say that a low-level trash like you will not be able to enter such a high-level banquet in your next life. This time, this young master is returning a favor to you on behalf of junior sister Laner. At the same time, I will also let you see clearly the gap between us. How big the gap is, so that you will not be obsessed and entangled. Su Lingchong said disdainfully. With that, Su Lingchong didn't care about Lin Yi's expression and immediately led Kong Xiaoming and the others away with their heads held high. Lin Yi, on the other hand, smiled nonchalantly. He thought about what these people had done today. They'd given him the seeds of the elixir, and now they'd sent him an invitation to the birthday banquet. This was the perfect service. He didn't understand why they were so smug about it. Also, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong used to have this expression every time they sent him spiritual jades. The IQ of the people on Heaven Stage Island was really low. However, it was no wonder that in the cultivation world of Heaven Stage Island, although there was no lack of intrigue, in the final analysis, it was more dependent on strength. Therefore, it was normal that they were certainly not as smart as the people in the secular world, because these people were generally thinking about how to cultivate. No wonder Kong Mingming could be put in an important position. Such a mean person, Su Lingchong was afraid that it was the first time he had seen such a person. After the interlude, Lin Yi returned to the cave residence and continued to concentrate on refining the foundation-breaking pill. This time, because the elixir materials were extremely abundant in advance, and Lin Yi had the intention to refine more in exchange for spiritual jades, he refined 3 batches in a row in one breath. Fortunately, it was the Shenong medicine cauldron. If it was replaced by other ordinary alchemy cauldrons, it would have exploded because of Lin Yi's desperate efforts. Shenong medicine cauldron had no other abnormal reaction from beginning to end except that the temperature was slightly higher than usual. Everything was normal. After 3 batches, Lin Yi could be said to have a great harvest this time. A total of 13 foundation-breaking pills were refined, and each of them was of the best quality. If these 13 top-grade foundation establishment barrier-breaking pills were all sold to the Hong Chamber of Commerce, even if they were sold at the lowest price of 800 spiritual jades each, they would still be worth at least 10,000 spiritual jades. That would be more than enough for the auction. Plus, he still had the 1,000-year tree crystal and the bag of blood-red gravel in his hands. He couldn't use them for crafting, but he could sell them if he needed to, and he'd be able to earn a huge sum of money in no time. This time, in order to collect the casting materials mentioned by the King of Junk, Lin Yi could be said to have gone all out. If it was in the past, even if Lin Yi was short of spiritual jades, it would be impossible for him to sell so many best-quality foundation-breaking pills. After all, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Once this matter reached the ears of someone with ulterior motives, it would easily cause trouble, just like the secret of the star inkstone being exposed. However, this time, Lin Yi had no other choice. According to the King of Junk, if he did not have tens of thousands of spiritual jades, even if he was qualified for the auction, it would be difficult to collect the other 6 materials except for the mysterious water droplet. The worst thing was that once he missed this auction, it would be impossible to collect these materials in a short period of time. Fortunately, after so many dealings, Lin Yi had a better understanding of Hong Zhong's character. This person was not a short-sighted person. Even if he was given a lot of best-quality foundation-breaking pills, as long as he was careful not to be discovered by outsiders, it should not be too big of a problem. The next evening, Kong Ming Ming delivered 4 sets of spiritual medicine seeds as promised. Lin Yi carefully counted them, and after confirming that there were 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds among them, he received them with satisfaction. He transplanted all 4 sets of spiritual medicine seeds into the space of the jade pendant. As long as he took care of them carefully, he would be able to harvest 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass in a few months. In addition to the 2 foundation-building pills he had on hand, it should be enough to support the next 2 breakthroughs. Of course, this was just a silly assumption. After all, after asking Hong Zhong and Chen Heihu to help him purchase the foundation-building pills, together with the 4 heart-devouring exquisite grass seeds, the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he needed in the future was guaranteed to a certain extent. Therefore, for Lin Yi, it was not necessary to keep the 2 foundation-building pills for himself. He could not use them in a short period of time, but in the long run, he did not need to worry about the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Therefore, there was no need for Lin Yi to cling on to these 2 best-quality foundation-building pills. They would be more valuable if he used them elsewhere. In the following period of time, Lin Yi could concentrate on his cultivation without any distractions. Apart from occasionally discussing matters related to casting with the King of Junk, there was nothing else to disturb him. Practicing diligently, not caring about stabilizing the strength of the middle stage of foundation-building realm, until he could fully control every bit of strength and every trace of genuine qi in his body. This was what Lin Yi was doing now. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. The birthday banquet of Laner, the first miss of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion, slowly began in the most high-end Huayang house in the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. With the invitation, Lin Yi immediately went to the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. This was the first time that he had entered the core area of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion since he arrived at the Heaven Stage Island, and he did it openly. With the birthday banquet invitation in his hand, he was naturally unimpeded. However, every time he passed through a layer of guards, he would be carefully interrogated. This feeling of being regarded as a thief really made him speechless. There was no other way. After all, he was not an internal member of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion, and he did not have a strong background at first glance. At the entrance of the Huayang house, Su Lingchong, as the organizer of this birthday banquet, stood at the entrance with his hardcore brothers, Lu Tianyu, and others, to welcome the guests. What made Lin Yi quite surprised was that even Kong Ming Ming was among them. Originally, Kong Ming Ming's insignificant status was the same as Lin Yi's. He was not qualified to appear in such a high-end occasion, let alone to stand at the entrance and welcome the guests together with Su Lingchong and Lu Tianyu, the young masters of the Sky-Reaching Pavilion. It should be known that the people who entered the birthday banquet today were either the top management of the 3 pavilions or the real power figures of a certain force. Every one of them was a real big boss. Even if they were to welcome the guests, they would at least be at the level of a young master with a strong background. Ordinary people would not have the opportunity to show their faces in front of these big bosses. The fact that Kong Ming Ming could be among these people could only mean that this guy was really good at flattering. Otherwise, Su Lingchong would not have supported him so much. Chapter 3981. Lin Yi was about to enter when he suddenly felt an overbearing and powerful aura behind him. Turning his head to look, he saw that the person who came into view was the current law enforcement hall master, Ramjia, whom he had met once before. In this kind of gathering of dignitaries, most people would consciously restrain their aura, lest they accidentally arouse the dissatisfaction of some big shot, which would then cause unnecessary trouble. But the most popular young powerhouse of the 3 great pavilions in front of him did not have the slightest intention of doing so. He did what he wanted and did not care about others. However, even if he did not restrain himself from beginning to end, no one around him was dissatisfied. Instead, they even took the initiative to nod to him. Among them, there was no lack of elders from the 3 great pavilions. Lin Yi's heart could not help but tremble. Breaking the norm with his own strength and making everyone around him accustomed to it without any gossip, it could be imagined how strong the strength behind this was. This Ramjia was really not to be trifled with. Along the way, wherever Ramjia passed, everyone retreated to make way for him. No one had the guts to block in front of him, until it was Lin Yi's turn. Even without turning his head, Lin Yi could clearly feel that an incomparably cold and overbearing aura was right behind him, very close at hand, only one step away. For a moment, all eyes were focused on Lin Yi. Who is this person? He looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. Could he be the nephew of one of the elders? Someone in the crowd whispered. To be qualified to attend Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet, he was naturally someone with a powerful background. It was normal for them to guess so. Hey, no matter which family's young master this person is, he dares to block in front of Hall Master Ram. I can only say to him that the ignorant are fearless. Yes, this person probably doesn't even recognize Hall Master Ram. He doesn't even know the taboo. How pitiful. Wherever I go, no one will be able to stop me. These are words personally spoken by Lord Gongyang. Even the upper echelons of the Elder Council will deliberately cooperate with him. This brat is so insensible. He's going to be in big trouble today. The people at the side discussed with Schadenfreude, and all of them looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. With Lin Yi's keen senses, although these discussions were intentionally suppressed, he was still able to sense them. But it still couldn't escape his eyes and ears. In a place like this, it wasn't wise to offend a powerful figure like Ramjia for such an inexplicable small matter. However, just as Lin Yi was about to move aside like everyone else, Su Lingqiong, who was in front, suddenly said, "Yo, isn't this the strongest newcomer in the history of Blue Cloud Pavilion?" Lin Yi, it's really an honor for me and little junior sister Lan, that you're willing to do us the honor of attending our birthday party. Come, this way please. His words caused an uproar in the audience, including Ramjia, who was standing behind Lin Yi. They also stopped in their tracks. The strongest newcomer in the history of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Isn't that miracle Dr. Dan St. Zhongliju? Since when was it this bullshit Lin Yi's turn? Yeah, but I heard that this Lin Yi seems to be from the common world like Grandmaster Zhongliju. It seems like he's someone who came from the common world like Grandmaster Zhongliju, and he's pretty famous in the pavilion. Bullsh *T. He's just a grassroots newcomer with some insignificant strength. How can he be so arrogant? Does he think that he can become the next Grandmaster Zhang just by stepping on some dog shit? He's the only one in tens of thousands of years. How can he be so arrogant? Just because of Su Lingqiong's words, everyone's voices rose one after another, and they instantly put Lin Yi on the stake. Not only did he become the target of everyone, but he was also in a dilemma. This guy really was evil. Lin Yi couldn't help but look at Su Lingqiong deeply. The reason why he suddenly said this was obvious. No matter how bad the people around him were, they were still inner disciples of Soaring Sky Pavilion, and each of them had a strong background. Even they might not have the right to attend Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet, and now they suddenly found out that a grassroots newcomer like Lin Yi was able to attend. It would be strange if he didn't become the target of everyone. Other than being talked about and looked down on, there was another problem in front of Lin Yi, and that was Ramjia who was behind him. If Su Lingqiong hadn't said that, Lin Yi would have just stepped aside. After all, it was the same for everyone else. But after Su Lingqiong's words of praise and mockery, the situation was completely different. Choosing to step back now was no longer something that could be ignored. It could only mean one thing. In front of Ramjia, in front of everyone, Lin Yi voluntarily gave up. Lin Yi didn't care, but he was here for Shangwan Laner. If he gave up now, perhaps Shangwan Laner would lose face. Therefore, Lin Yi was in a dilemma. However, if he didn't step back, he was likely to offend the high and mighty law enforcement hall master, Ramjia, behind him. After all, he once swore that, "No one can stop me wherever I go." Just by looking at his courageous spirit, one could tell what kind of Taoist heart he held. Even the elders of the three pavilions had to tolerate him, let alone a grassroots newcomer like Lin Yi. If he didn't step back, he would offend Ramjia. If he stepped back, he might make Shangwan Laner lose face. This was Lin Yi's current situation. Today's birthday banquet was indeed a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. He had just arrived, and he had already encountered such a difficult problem. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Yi suddenly moved. However, what caused everyone to be in an uproar was that he actually had the guts not to step back. Instead, He walked straight to Su Lingqiong and the others, took out the invitation letter and said indifferently, "Young Master Su, can I go in now?" Huh. Su Lingqiong was stunned. He had never thought that Lin Yi would have such a reaction. Or rather, he had never thought that Lin Yi would have such guts. If he were in Lin Yi's shoes, even young Master Su, who had a strong background, would not dare to block in front of Ramjia. What he had said just now was just to make Lin Yi look bad. He had never thought that this guy would be stupid enough to directly make the stupidest choice. It was so stupid that it made people run with joy. In the face of such a pleasant surprise, Su Lingqiong naturally couldn't ask for more. He looked at Lu Tianyu and Kong Mingming, then secretly glanced at Ramjia's expression. Chapter 3982. This young Master Su changed his attitude really quickly. Everyone was speechless. Just now, it was clearly his words that forced this Lin Yi into a dilemma, and now he was using the hierarchy to teach people a lesson. He was really mean and shameless. However, everyone was just watching the show. All of them were already unhappy with Lin Yi, so of course, they couldn't jump out and speak up for justice at this time. They even hoped that Lin Yi would be trampled to death by Ramjia, a typical case of watching a good show. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Huh, did I hear wrongly just now? Could it be that the one who called me and wasn't young Master Su, but some guard dog that doesn't know the rules? Or could it be that the invitation that young Master Su personally delivered to my doorstep is fake, and I actually don't have the qualifications to enter and was just played by you? Su Lingqiong was instantly speechless. Making things difficult for Lin Yi was just an idea that came to his mind on the spur of the moment. He originally thought that in front of Ramjia's overbearing power, trash like Lin Yi would definitely be scared shitless. Who would have thought that this guy didn't have the slightest bit of fear, and actually had the mood to beat around the bush and insult him? Logically, Lin Yi indeed didn't have any wrongdoing. Although the three great pavilions paid attention to the hierarchy, at the same time, there was the rule of first come, first served. Other people making way for Ramjia was their own consciousness, and they were afraid of Ramjia, but it didn't mean that everyone had to do so. After a long time, Su Lingqiong sneered with a gloomy face, but he didn't speak. As long as he didn't speak, the guards wouldn't let Lin Yi enter, and this was the effect he wanted to achieve. No matter how sharp Lin Yi's mouth was, so what? He, young Master Su, didn't need to speak at all. As long as he blocked the person here, Ramjia would naturally come out to deal with Lin Yi. As expected, Ramjia spoke very quickly, and the first thing he said shocked everyone. "You're Lin Yi?" Not only the people present, but even Lin Yi himself was a little surprised. He had only met Ramjia once. They had not even met once. After all, during the coercion resistance test in the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi had only stood in the crowd and glanced at Ramjia from afar. However, Ramjia had not paid any attention to a nobody like Lin Yi. However, Ramjia's words clearly meant that he had at least heard of the existence of Lin Yi, which was an incredible thing in anyone's eyes. After thinking about it, Lin Yi felt that the reason why the other party had heard of him was because of the other party. The only possibility was that when Shanghai Laner came to the law enforcement hall to help him out, she had attracted the attention of the other party. "Yes, I'm Lin Yi. Nice to meet you, Hall Master Ram." Lin Yi turned around and cupped his hands. Ramjia looked Lin Yi up and down carefully, which made people look at each other in dismay. The arrogance of the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall was well known in the North Island. Even if the elders of the three great pavilions were standing opposite him, he did not even bother to look at them. What on earth was Lin Yi capable of making Ramjia look at him so differently? After a while, Ramjia spoke slowly, with an unquestionable domineering and strong tone. "If it were someone else, they would have been dead by now. Those who dared to block my path are already dead, but you, Lin Yi, can let them off the hook." For a while, the audience was in an uproar again, and even Lin Yi himself was shocked inexplicably. With Ramjia's arrogance, he never lied. To be precise, he never disdained to lie in front of anyone. If he said he wanted to kill someone, then even if this was Shanghai Laner's birthday party, and even if the masters of the three great pavilions were present, they could not stop him at all. However, he was especially lenient to Lin Yi in public. What was going on? Linny himself was a little confused. He had no friendship with Ramjia. Why did he make Ramjia treat him differently? You'd better not misunderstand what I mean. I have an old acquaintance who is indebted to you for taking care of him, so I'm giving him face. As for you, you're nothing more than an ant. You're not even worthy of my attention. Gong Yangjia gave a rare explanation. His disdain for Lin Yi came from the arrogance in his bones. He did not hide it at all, and there was no need to hide it at all. With the current gap in strength between them, Lin Yi was the same as everyone else present. In his eyes, Lin Yi was just an insignificant ant, without the slightest weight, let alone any status to speak of. This feeling of being looked down upon from above, even with Lin Yi's indifferent temperament, gave birth to a rare trace of displeasure, but he did not show it on his face. In that case, I have to thank that friend. Lin Yi smiled calmly. The friend he mentioned was naturally Shanghai Laner. After all, from Ramjia's words, it was not difficult to infer that he deliberately let him go for the sake of Shanghai Laner. This kind of thing was not surprising. Looking at the whole 3 pavilions in the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua was the only one who could make Ramjia bow his head. As the only granddaughter of Shanghai Tianhua, Shanghai Laner naturally had a lot of weight in Ramjia's eyes. The fact that Shanghai Laner could successfully bring Lin Yi out of the law enforcement hall last time was proof. As for the relationship between Lin Yi and Shangguan Lan although he had been purposely hiding it from Su Lingchong and the others, if this Gong Yangjie in front of him wanted to know something, there was no way to hide it. As everyone said, in the eyes of the law enforcement hall, there were no secrets, and in the eyes of Ramjia, the head of the law enforcement hall, it was naturally so. I hope you didn't find the wrong person. When Ramjia heard this, the corner of his mouth involuntarily raised into a playful smile. Of course, he could guess what Linny was thinking in his heart. Unfortunately, he might give face to Shanghai Tianhua, but how could a little girl like Shanghai Laner have so much face in his eyes? It was ridiculous. However, Ramjia did not intend to expose him at all. He did not intend to reveal anything to Lin Yi, and he was even more disinclined to talk to such an insignificant ant. Glancing at Ramjia's expression that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling, Lin Yi's heart slightly jolted. But if Ramjia didn't explain, it was impossible for him to figure out what exactly Ramjia meant. So, he immediately turned around and said to Su Lingchong, "Now I can finally go in, right, young Master Su?" Su Lingchong's expression was stiff as the corner of his mouth drew back. This time, it was rare for him to be able to make things difficult for Linny in front of everyone, but even if he was beaten to death, he would never have imagined that such a miraculous turn of events would actually occur. Even Ramjia treated Lin Yi differently. Motherf asterisk Kerr, could it be that this world had gone mad? However, now that even the great god, Ramjia, had spoken, it was unrealistic for Su Lingchong to want to use this kind of matter to make things difficult for Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he didn't make things difficult for Lin Yi, he would instead arouse Ramjia's displeasure, and that would be a huge joke. Chapter 3983. Please go ahead. Su Lingchong had to signal Lu Tianyu and the others to let him pass. His eyes were full of mockery. Anyway, the show had just begun. The entire birthday party was arranged by him. It was easy for him to punish Lin Yi. There would be plenty of opportunities later. After letting Lin Yi go in with a sneer, Su Lingchong and the others immediately bowed to Ramjia, who followed closely behind. His face was full of joy. Hall leader Ram, please come in. Entering the interior of Huayang House, the originally magnificent hall became even more dreamy and fantasy-like because every place was carefully decorated, as if it were a paradise of immortals. At this moment, although many of the top big shots had not yet appeared, there were many people who had arrived in advance. They exchanged greetings and made friends with each other. Those who could come here today were not ordinary people. Now was the best opportunity to expand their social network. However, Linny obviously did not have this kind of idea. After looking around casually, he did not find Shanghai Laner, the main character of the birthday party. So he found a secluded corner and sat down. He drank the high-grade spirit tea provided for free at the birthday party. He was quite comfortable. Different from Linny, who was ignored, Ramjia, who followed closely behind, immediately became the focus of the audience. However, because he was too famous and arrogant, everyone in the audience was in awe of him. No one dared to go up and strike up a conversation with him. Looking around, Ramjia's subsequent action made Lin Yi's eyelids twitch. This person actually walked directly in his direction. Then, without saying anything, he directly sat down on the seat opposite Lin Yi. What did this person want to do? Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate. However, after the other person sat down, he did not take any further action. He just reclined on the spacious chair lazily and coldly looked at the people and things in the venue at the moment. Lin Yi quietly looked at the other person. Seeing that he did not move, he immediately ignored him and still sat there with his arms crossed. His expression was relaxed and calm. The two of them sat across from each other. Because of Ramjia, almost everyone in the audience couldn't help but glance at them before silently withdrawing their gazes. If they looked for too long, they were afraid that Ramjia would be displeased. After a while, Ramjia suddenly spoke. "What's your relationship with Zhang Liju?" Lin Yi was taken aback for a moment, then replied with his usual expression, "Hall Master Gong Yang must be joking. Master Zhang is the top big shot of Middle Island, and I'm just a grassroots newcomer. How is it possible for you to be related to him?" Unexpectedly, Ramjia said directly, "You're lying." Lin Yi was speechless. He was indeed lying, but even Zhang Liju himself didn't know about his relationship with Zhang Liju, and he never told anyone about it. How could this Ramjia know? First, you and Zhang Liju are both from the common world. Second, you and Zhang Liju are both elixir refiners. Third, after coming to Sky Class Island, you've been asking around for information about Zhang Liju many times, and you're saying that it's not a problem? Ramjia laid on his side with one hand under his chin, looking at Lin Yi from the corner of his eyes. Lin Yi was shocked. He never thought that a mere grassroots newbie like him would be investigated so thoroughly by the high and mighty Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. He was really overwhelmed by the favor. Lying in front of me. It's meaningless. Ramjia didn't know why he was so talkative. He lazily pointed at his head. All the information about the Hall of Law is reflected in my head. If necessary, I can use the soul-searching technique at any time. Do you want to try? Nope. What do you want from me, Hall Master Gongyang? Just say it. Lin Yi said in a low voice. Haha. Gongyang immediately laughed. Little brat, don't make people laugh anymore. Why would I look for an ant-like newbie like you? It's just to relieve boredom. Don't worry, I'm not bored enough to use the soul-searching technique on you. I'm just curious about your relationship with Zhang Liju. Lin Yi kept quiet for a while and said faintly, I have nothing to do with Master Zhang Liju. If I must say there is, then I'd say that I'm looking for Master Zhang to help me save someone. Save those inheritors in the common world? I didn't know that you were such an affectionate person. It's fine. If you meet Zhang Liju, please pass a message for me. Speaking up to here, Gong Yangji's eyes suddenly became a bit cold, like a knife scraping across one's skin, causing one's hair to stand on end. Tell him that this king will return the humiliation of that defeat 100-fold. Tell him not to worry, that day will not be too far away. All right. Lin Yi's face didn't change, but his heart was in turmoil. This was the first time he heard that Ramjia had fought with Zhang Liju before. With Zhang Liju's legendary experience, it was normal for someone as strong as Ramjia to lose to him. However, what shocked Lin Yi even more was that Ramjia had the confidence to take revenge against Zhang Liju, who was one of the top bosses in Zhongdao. Just how strong was he? Thinking about it carefully, although Lin Yi couldn't tell how strong or weak Gong Yangjia was, he could tell from the way Gong Yangjia treated the higher-ups of the Elders Guild that this person was definitely not to be underestimated. His strength was probably far above that of a normal elder. A person like this was called the number one in the new generation of the three pavilions. As the two were talking, Lin Yi suddenly saw a few people coming in from the corner of his eye. They were all familiar faces that he didn't want to see the most. The three of them, Yu Zhao at the back, followed by Southern Skygate, and at the front was a middle-aged man who looked extremely handsome. It was the leader of the three Nan brothers, Nan Tianba. Along the way, Southern Skygate whispered, Boss, Did you see the kid next to Su Lingqiong? That's Kong Mingming. I'm starting to suspect that he's that Lin heir. Yu Jia, who was behind him, followed up. This disciple feels the same way. If Kong Xiaoming didn't give Su Lingqiong something as precious as the Star Ink Stone, would Su Lingqiong support him so much just because he's just a newbie? Would he even bring him out to welcome guests? Strictly speaking, even an inner disciple like Yu Jia with an ordinary background wasn't qualified to welcome guests at Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet, let alone a mere Kong Mingming. Yu Jia was jealous. Chapter 3984. With Nan Tianba's protective nature, if he could confirm that Kong Mingming was Lin heir, then he would not hesitate to kill Kong Mingming to avenge his third brother, Nan Tianyo. However, it was only a suspicion, and there was no concrete evidence. This matter was not easy to deal with. One had to know that the agreement between them and Su Lingqiong was not made by the few of them alone. The fact that the two sides were able to shake hands and make peace was the result of the mutual compromise between the powers behind them. If they acted rashly, not only would they offend the other party, even the powers behind them would be dissatisfied. They would offend both inside and outside. No matter how hot Nan Tianba's temper was, he would not do such a stupid thing. Hearing this, Nan Tianba could only remain silent. He was currently at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, and the temptation of the Star Ink Stone was greater than anyone else's. However, he was currently in a situation where he could not act even though he had his suspicions. As he spoke, Nan Tianba had already led the way. The direction he was heading towards was where Ram Jia and Linny were. Hallmaster Ram, long time no see. Walking forward, Nan Tianba took the initiative to greet Lin Yi. As for an insignificant person like Lin Yi, he was completely ignored. Ram Jia raised his eyelids and glanced at him. About the proposal from last time, have you thought about it? This matter. I still need to think about it carefully. Nan Tianba hesitated for a moment and glanced at Lin Yi, as if there was a secret that couldn't be revealed to outsiders. He immediately said in a harsh tone, "Who do you think you are? How dare you sit here and disturb the conversation between Hallmaster Ram and me? Hurry up and scram." Lin Yi immediately furrowed his eyebrows. Although Nan Tianba was strong, compared to Ram Jia, there was still a huge gap. Even Ram Jia wasn't this arrogant. So who did Nan Tianba think he was? I'm sorry, I don't have the habit of giving way to others. If you want to talk with Hallmaster Ram, why don't you consider changing the location? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "Brat, what did you say?" Nan Tianba's temper immediately flared up. As for Ram Jia, he was still lazily reclining on his chair, looking as if he had nothing to do with this matter. I'm not interested in repeating myself. If Your Excellency has a problem with your ears, I suggest that you find a doctor. You might be able to cure it. Lin Yi was still indifferent. No matter how strong the other party was, as long as the other party provoked him, Lin Yi never knew how to retreat. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. A coward would never be able to stand at the pinnacle of experts. You are courting death. These words were completely squeezed out from the gaps between Nan Tianba's teeth. He never thought that he would be provoked by such a weak ant in front of everyone. Lin Yi's strength in the middle stage of Foundation establishment couldn't be hidden from his eyes. In front of an aloof gold core stage expert like him, Lin Yi could only be regarded as a weakling. As his voice fell, Nan Tianba's ferocious aura suddenly rose to the extreme, causing the audience to cry out in alarm. A gold core stage expert was no small matter. However, what was even more surprising was that there was still someone who dared to make a move on such an occasion. This is Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet. Before Your Excellency makes a move, it's best to think about the consequences first. Lin Yi calmly said. If the other party was Ram Jia, perhaps it was really possible for him to make a move here without any scruples. However, if it was someone else, even if it was a fierce character like Nan Tianba, they might not have the guts to do so. Making a move here, it was equivalent to smashing Shangwan Laner's place. Even more so, it was equivalent to smashing Shangwan Tianhua's place. Not just anyone could have this kind of confidence. In front of a super big shot like Shangwan Tianhua, a gold core stage expert was just an ant. Moreover, Intuition told Lin Yi that Nan Tianba wasn't as hot-tempered and brainless as he looked on the surface. He wouldn't do something so stupid as to put himself in danger just to teach a small character like him a lesson. Sure enough, Nan Tianba's aura suddenly stagnated. He coldly looked down at Lin Yi and said, "Brat, you have guts. What's your name?" Without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Southern Skygate and Yuja had already moved forward and whispered a few words into his ear. Not only did they know Lin Yi's identity and name, they even told Lin Yi their previous test. To be honest, seeing Lin Yi in a place like this, especially when Lin Yi was sitting so openly in front of Ramjia, Southern Skygate and Yuja couldn't react at all. Even if they recognized him at first glance, they still couldn't believe it. It wasn't until now that they could finally confirm that this guy was the newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion that they had suspected before. Heh, what kind of world is this? Even a mere newcomer from Blue Cloud Pavilion can sneak into this place. Or could it be that you simply took advantage of the fact that the guards were lax to sneak in? Nan Tianba sneered as he listened to the whole story. I heard that for Miss Shangwan's birthday banquet this time, half of the guards are elites transferred from the Hall of Law Enforcement at the last minute. You're insulting their abilities in front of the Hall Master. Isn't that appropriate? Lin Yi's face was as calm as ever. Nan Tianba's expression couldn't help but change. After hearing Lin Yi's words, he felt like he was indirectly scolding the locust tree. At this moment, Yu Jia, who was behind them, suddenly spoke up. Eldest martial uncle, second martial uncle, disciple's master died mysteriously. This Lin Yi is one of the suspects. Martial uncles, please help disciple find out the truth and let master's soul rest in peace. His sudden interruption was naturally to give Nan Tianba a way out. At the same time, it also didn't dispel their suspicions towards Lin Yi. Although their focus was currently on Kong Mingming, they didn't dare to act rashly because of Su Lingqiu. Now that Lin Yi, the second suspect, had bumped into the muzzle, they obviously couldn't let go of this opportunity. Unknowingly, Yuja had always felt that Lin Yi's temperament was very similar to Lin Er's. As a cultivator, his strong intuition was very accurate most of the time. As soon as these words came out, Nan Tianba's eyes suddenly lit up. He secretly gave Yuja a look of praise and immediately said righteously, when third brother Nan Tianyong died, the higher-ups of the three great pavilions clearly stated that they would investigate this matter. However, there hasn't been any progress. Taking advantage of today's opportunity, Hall Master Gong Yang might as well investigate this Lin Yi. With your ability, if you want to find out anything, it should be very simple. Chapter 3985. However, for Lin Yi, once the soul-searching technique was used, it would be equivalent to a disaster. No one could save him in this situation, not even Shanghai Laner. Although Shanghai Laner was a young miss, once it involved the powerful people present, her words might not be that effective, unless her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, personally came forward. However, as the dignified pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, how could Shanghai Tianhua stand up for Lin Yi, a nobody from Blue Cloud Pavilion? If it really didn't work, they could only try to create chaos and escape. Compared to being discovered by the soul-searching technique, this would give them a slim chance of survival. At this moment, a familiar girl's voice suddenly sounded from behind them. Lin Yi is this lady's savior, who dares to use the soul-searching technique on him? Following the appearance of the person, everyone's eyes instantly focused on her. Even a legendary figure like Ramjia was only slightly inferior. The person who came was the main character of this birthday banquet, Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi's heart immediately relaxed. As long as the soul-searching technique was not used, Shanghai Laner came forward to help him, so it would still be effective. Even if Nan Tianba and the others wanted to punish him, they probably wouldn't dare to go against the will of this young miss on this day. However, the reaction of Nan Tianba and the others was beyond Lin Yi's expectations. Young Miss Shangwan, even if this Lin Yi is your savior, he could also be the real murderer who killed this seat's third brother. There is no conflict between the two. Pavilion Master Shangwan had personally ordered for this matter to be investigated. Does young miss want to let your grandfather's order become empty words? Nan Tianba said forcefully. After joining hands with Su Yuanzheng, who was behind Su Lingqiu, Their side was already very clear. Since the background had nothing to do with Shanghai Tianhua, then there was naturally no need to care too much about a little girl like Shanghai Laner. This, Linny. In a hurry, Shanghai Laner didn't know what to say. Shanghai Laner could only helplessly look at Lin Yi. She wanted to help Linny out of this predicament, but this place was not like the ordinary law enforcers she had faced in the law enforcement hall last time. Instead, it was Nan Tianba, who had an extraordinary status. If he could not stand on his feet, then even she, the eldest daughter of the Shangguan family, would be helpless. Although she sometimes behaved like a willful and ignorant little girl, when it came to important matters related to her grandfather, Shangguan Tianhua, she would never take it lightly. At this time, if she said something wrong, it could be used as a pretext by others, which would affect her grandfather's image and status. This kind of thing had happened a lot in the past. Lin Yi gently shook his head at Shanghai Laner. He signaled her not to say too much. After all, she was still a little girl. At this time, the more she said, the more mistakes she would make. Instead of being bullied by the other side, it was better to wait and see. Seeing that Shanghai Laner was choked by his words, Nan Tianba and the others couldn't help but look at each other with a smile. Then, he said to Ramjia, "Hall Master Ram, you are the #1 person in charge of the 3 Great Pavilions punishment. Right now, the real suspect, Lin Yi, is right in front of you. If you just ignore him like this, I feel that it is quite inappropriate. What do you say?" With just a few words, the situation was completely under Nan Tianba's control. It could be seen that this guy was not as rough as he looked on the surface, and that fiery and brainless. Lin Yi could only secretly be on guard. Things had suddenly developed to this point, and even if Shanghai Laner personally came forward, she still wouldn't be able to help him out of this predicament. It was really a bit difficult to get off the tiger. Right now, he could only take one step at a time. However, at this time, Ramjia glanced at Nan Tianba. He said indifferently, "Nan Tianba, when did it become your turn to teach me what I need to do?" With just one simple sentence, Nan Tianba and the others, who were originally complacent, suddenly had their faces collapse. They were so numb that they were confused by this arrogant brat that they forgot that Ramjia wasn't someone they could casually order around. If they really pointed fingers at Ramjia and violated Ramjia's taboo, Linny would probably be fine. Instead, they would be the ones facing a disaster. Moreover, the reason why Nan Tianba's case didn't make any progress at all was actually the result of Ramjia's incitement. He felt that this case wasn't important, so no one would investigate it. Naturally, there wouldn't be any results. Therefore, when Nan Tianba's words fell into Ramjia's ears, it was the same as reprimanding him for not doing his job. With Ramjia's arrogance, it would be strange if he nodded his head. No. Nan Tianba hurriedly tried to explain. However, before he could explain, Ramjia suddenly stood up without any warning. An incomparably majestic and overbearing aura instantly pressed down on top of his head. Nan Tianba was caught off guard. His knees went soft, and he almost knelt down in front of everyone. He forcefully clenched his teeth and supported his body. However, Southern Skygate and Yu Jia, who were behind him, didn't have this kind of strength. With a putong sound, their knees hit the floor and they spat out blood. "No? Is it your fault, or is it my fault?" Ramjia coldly glanced at him, then said meaningfully, "This is just a small warning for you. I don't have that much patience, and I'm too lazy to care about this bullshit. As for the question I asked you before, give me an answer within 3 days. Otherwise, you should be very clear about the consequences." After saying this, Ramjia stood up and left, leaving the crowd with an unruly and domineering back. This person was truly extraordinary. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but admire him. To be honest, a man as tyrannical and arrogant as Ramjia was rarely seen in this world. However, what made Lin Yi even more curious was the matter between Ramjia and Nan Tianba. In such a short period of time, it seemed like this was the second time he had mentioned it. "Hee, this time you've kicked an iron plate on the cold-faced ghost. Serves you right." Shanghai Laner rejoiced in their misfortune. As for the little curly bear that came along with her and was currently hanging on Lin Yi's neck, it swaggered its claws at Nan Tianba and the others. Nan Tianba's face turned ashen from anger, but he couldn't do anything. He could only let out a cold snort and silently pulled Southern Skygate and Yuzha up from the ground. After all, this was Shangguan Laner's birthday banquet. Because he was the one in the right, he couldn't be blamed for not giving this Missy any face. However, if he dared to throw a tantrum now, it would be too much. If this matter were to fall into Shangguan Tianhua's ears, he would definitely suffer the consequences. Chapter 3986. Lin Yi took a deep look at Nan Tianba and the others, then turned around and followed Shanghai Laner. Although these people were intimidated by Ramjia, if he continued to stay here, these people might take the risk out of desperation. Nan Tianba had once told Lin Yi that he also knew the soul-searching technique. Although his realm wasn't as high as Ramjia's, even if it was the most basic soul-searching technique, he still had to be careful. Before he had enough strength, Lin Yi felt that it was better to have less contact with these people. Watching Lin Yi and Shanghai Laner leave, Nan Tianba's eyes couldn't help but spit fire. To be honest, they didn't really suspect Lin Yi. It was just that Nan Tianba didn't like Lin Yi, so he used it as a pretext to make a fuss. After all, they had tried to investigate Lin Yi several times before, but to no avail. Therefore, even if Lin Yi still had flaws, their thinking had inevitably fallen into the wrong zone. Especially when Lin Yi pushed the boat with the current and shifted the biggest suspicion onto Kong Ming. At least before they investigated Kong Ming, they wouldn't turn around and suspect Lin Yi. This time, it could only be said that Lin Yi's luck wasn't good. Sitting together with a prominent person like Ramjia had inexplicably provoked Nan Tianba's dissatisfaction, which was why he encountered this unexpected crisis. Following Shanghai Laner, they went to the third floor. This was the lounge that Huayang Restaurant had prepared for this young miss. Aside from the outside being heavily guarded, there weren't any unnecessary people in the room. For Lin Yi, this could save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. After asking Lin Yi to sit down, Shangguan Lan reminded him seriously, "Little junior brother, that ugly black-faced guy just now. Although he can't be compared with a pervert like Cold Face Ghost, he is still very powerful. Don't underestimate him. My grandfather once privately commented on the new generation of the three pavilions, and this guy is ranked in the top 10 troublesome people. So, little disciple, if you meet this person in the future, it's better to stay away." Top 10 of the new generation of the three pavilions? Thank you for the reminder, little disciple sister. I'll remember it. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. When mentioning the new generation of the three pavilions, the first person that came to mind would be the head of the law enforcement hall, Ramjia. Anyone else in front of him would pale in comparison. But this didn't mean that the other new generation masters weren't strong. Gong Yangjia was a rare exception. His target was a legend like Zhang Liju, and the other new generation masters were nothing to scoff at. As for the other new generation of the three pavilions, they were still the future pillars of the three pavilions. Whether it was status or strength, no ordinary person could shake them. Shangguan Tianhua was the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even if it was a private evaluation that was never made public, its credibility and authenticity were not inferior to the authority of the three great pavilions. For Nan Tianba to be able to be ranked in the top 10, it could be seen that he was not a simple character. At least up until now, Lin Yi was just an ant that couldn't even be stepped on. If he wanted to have the strength to deal with a threat like this, then he would need to do so. You're still a newcomer. There's still a long way to go. Hee, but little disciple brother, you don't have to be too afraid. You're still a newcomer. Unless you meet that ugly big black-face monster alone outside, he won't dare to come looking for trouble. Shanghai Laner comforted him with a smile. The protection of the new generation of the three pavilions wasn't just for show. Although in terms of influence and power, the Welcome Pavilion was ranked last among the big pavilions. As long as they stayed within the territory of the Welcome Pavilion, no one would dare to touch these newcomers. Even Nan Tianba was no exception. Unless he wanted to be wanted by the Elders Guild. Yes, I know. Lin Yi nodded, but didn't comment on this. Normally, as a newcomer, as long as he stayed in the Welcome Pavilion, he would be able to sleep peacefully. But this was on the premise that no one would be able to find a loophole. Otherwise, people would always be able to find a loophole. To forge iron, one had to be strong. In the end, only when one's own strength was truly strong would they be able to sleep peacefully. Of course, there was no need to explain these concerns to Shanghai Laner. Lin Yi immediately took out an exquisite spirit jade box from his bosom. This was what he had carefully selected at the Hong Chamber of Commerce last time. He handed it to Shanghai Laner and said, "Little senior sister, this is a small token of my appreciation. I wish you a happy birthday." Wow, what a beautiful box. Shanghai Laner's eyes lit up. She was pleasantly surprised and said, "This is the texture of high-grade spirit jades. The carving technique is also very good. It should be a master-level craftsmanship. Senior sister, I wanted such a treasure box. Thank you, little junior brother. I like it very much." Seeing Shanghai Laner's fondness for the box, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. This spirit jade box had indeed cost him a lot of spirit jades, but how could his gift be just a box? The spirit jade box was just a foil. What was inside was the real gift. "Little senior sister, why don't you open it and take a look?" Lin Yi smiled and pointed at the box. Shanghai Laner was slightly stunned. In her opinion, with Lin Yi's qualifications as a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was already very rare and very thoughtful for him to give her such an exquisite spirit jade box. She was quite touched. However, from what Lin Yi said, could it be that there was something else inside? Shanghai Laner adjusted her breathing. With the mood of witnessing the surprise, she wanted to slowly open the spirit jade box. However, she didn't expect that before she could open it, the little curly bear next to her had already snatched the spirit jade box from her hand. Shanghai Laner suddenly let out a soft cry and hurriedly wanted to snatch it back. At this moment, Su Lingchong happened to walk to the door of the room and happened to hear Shanghai Laner's soft cry. He hurriedly kicked the door open and said anxiously, "Little junior sister, what's wrong?" Only then did Shanghai Laner recover from her shock. She couldn't be bothered to chase after the little curly bear anymore. She covered her mouth and stuck out her tongue. Pretending to be calm, she said, "What's wrong? There's nothing wrong here. Senior brother Su, don't you think it's improper for you to barge into this lady's room?" Su Lingchong suspiciously looked at the two of them. He had just heard the servants say that Shanghai Laner had personally brought Lin Yi up to the third floor. A man and a woman were alone in a room. He was afraid that there would be some scandal, so he hurriedly chased after them. In the end, he saw the situation in front of him. Lin Yi didn't seem to be abnormal. He still had a calm and pretentious demeanor. However, Shanghai Laner, this young lady, was somewhat abnormal. Chapter 3987. All of this was truly too easy to cause one's imagination to run wild. Especially since Su Lingchong's first impression was that this kid, Lin Yi, had always wanted to be a toad that wanted to eat swan meat. And it was rare for him to have a chance to be alone in a room with Shangwan Laner. Could it be that this beast would easily let it go? In Su Lingchong's mind, the scene from earlier was quickly restored to another scene as a matter of course, and that was Lin Yi, this bastard, taking advantage of the fact that Shangwan Laner wasn't paying attention and had secretly kissed Shangwan Laner forcefully. When he thought up to here, Su Lingchong instantly felt inconsolable. Motherfucker. I've chased after this little girl for so many years, yet I haven't even been able to hold her hand once. In the end, I actually allowed Lin Yi, this grassroot that's pretending to be pretentious, to seize the initiative. This sort of thing is intolerable. Shangwan Laner had always been Su Lingchong's woman, and it was related to his great cause in the future. No one was allowed to encroach upon her, and if anyone dared to touch even a strand of hair on her, then it would be an irreconcilable enmity with him, young Master Su. So, when he just noticed a tiny sign earlier, Su Lingchong had thought of ways to destroy the relationship between Shangwan Laner and Lin Yi, and he wanted to nip this practically impossible possibility in the bud. He originally thought that he could already sit back and relax, yet he never imagined that such a thing would actually occur right under his eyes. Even though he and Shanghai Laner hadn't established any status yet, under the tacit consent of the parents of both parties, Su Lingchong had long since taken Shanghai Laner to be his woman. Presently, in this sort of situation, Was it any different from being made a cuckold by Lin Yi? Lin Yi, this young master will make living worse than death for you. Instantly, Su Lingqiang was actually stimulated by his own guess to the point of losing control of his emotions, and his eyes were completely red as he wanted to make a move against Lin Yi. In fact, he had not completely lost his mind. As long as he revealed the fact that Lin Yi had violated and molested Shangguan Laner, even if he were to crush Lin Yi's bones and scatter his ashes on the spot, he would not need to take any responsibility. Lin Yi was shocked. He didn't have the time to think about why this guy suddenly went berserk. He quickly pulled Shanghai Laner and wanted to retreat. After all, his opponent was a well-established expert in the great perfection of the building foundation stage, and Lin Yi himself was only in the middle stage of the building foundation stage. If he did not use his trump card, the super true Qi Bomb, he would certainly be overwhelmed if he fought the opponent recklessly. However, Shangguan Lan was one step ahead of him. She stood in front of him and shouted at Su Lingqiang, "What do you want to do? Little junior brother is my important guest. If you dare to attack him, I will kill him. If you dare to make a move against him, I'll go tell Grandpa." Su Lingqiang's figure paused, and he looked past Shanghai Laner to look at Lin Yi. Immediately after, his gaze became even more sinister, and he said half mockingly and half mockingly, "Junior sister Laner, if he is your important guest, then what am I?" Unexpectedly, Shanghai Laner's big missy temper flared up, and she didn't give him the slightest bit of face as she said, "What is the matter between this young lady and junior brother have to do with you? Do I need to explain it to an outsider like you?" Hearing this, Su Lingqiang couldn't help but laugh out of extreme anger, and he nervously pointed at Lin Yi, then pointed at himself. He sneered and said, "I'm an outsider, and you and this grassroots slut are on the same side? Good, very good, well said. Who are you calling a grassroots slut? I'll give you a chance. Quickly apologize to my junior brother." Shanghai Laner was instantly enraged as well. She didn't have many friends in the first place, and after experiencing all sorts of things before, in her heart, Lin Yi's position was already far from what an ordinary friend could compare to, and as for a hateful person like Su Lingqiang, he couldn't even be considered as a friend in her eyes. Her standpoint could be said to be clear at a glance. Unexpectedly, Su Lingqiang suddenly changed his expression into a cold and indifferent one, and he said coldly, "All the important figures downstairs have already arrived. Junior sister Lan if you have nothing to do with this grassroots slut, then you should go down as soon as possible. Don't let so many important figures wait for too long." Looking at Su Lingqiang's back figure that turned around and left, Shanghai Laner's beautiful face instantly flushed red with anger. Previously, she cooperated with Lin Yi's act and said that she hated Lin Yi, but that hateful person like Su Lingqiang actually dared to insult Lin Yi in front of her, and that was unforgivable. But unfortunately, the other party was after all one of the few young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and now he was even the senior brother in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Even she, the eldest miss of the Shangguan family, couldn't do anything to Su Lingqiang, and it wasn't easy to help Lin Yi vent his anger. "Junior sister, I'm sorry, I've caused trouble for you," Lin Yi said with a sigh behind her. "How could it be? Junior brother, don't think too much. I, your senior sister, originally wanted to fall out with this hateful person, but because of my grandfather's feelings, I didn't say it out loud. Today is also good, so that he won't come and bother me for no reason in the future." Shanghai Laner quickly explained and comforted him. Lin Yi secretly shook his head. Su Lingqiang didn't seem like a person who would give up so easily. For a young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion like him, the attraction of Shanghai Laner to him was definitely not as simple as a woman's beauty. Even if Shanghai Laner openly fell out with him, he wouldn't just let go. To be precise, the family force behind him wouldn't allow him to just let go like this. In this kind of situation, if Su Lingqiang continued to lose control of his emotions and went berserk, perhaps it would be easier to deal with him. After all, the surroundings were heavily guarded. If this guy was only coming for him, Lin Yi believed that he would be able to hold on until the guards came to rescue him. At that time, it wouldn't be easy for Su Lingqiang to clean up the mess. On the contrary, looking at the current situation, Su Lingqiang seemed to have lost control of his emotions, but in the end, he quickly regained his composure. This was even more terrifying, and it was enough to prove that this young Master Su's shrewdness was far from that of an ordinary person. The calmness in front of him was precisely the precursor of a storm. Junior sister, I think you might have to be a little more careful. In the future, when you come into contact with Su Lingchong, it's best to be more vigilant. Lin Yi reminded. After today's incident, he, Lin Yi, would definitely be the main target of Su Lingchong's revenge. However, Shanghai Laner, this young miss, even if she had the protection of her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua, she might not necessarily be able to sleep peacefully. Once she relaxed even a little, this scheming young Master Su might take the risk out of desperation. Shanghai Laner was stunned. Then she waved her fist and bared her two little canine teeth. This lady isn't afraid of him. If he dares to have any crooked thoughts, this lady will cut him up. On the other hand, the little curly bear at the side very cooperatively sat down and made a cutting motion, causing Lin Yi to involuntarily perspire with shame. He hadn't seen it before, but this master and pet pair were really fierce enough. Chapter 3988. After all, even if they were open-minded, they couldn't stop others from thinking the wrong way. If Shangguan Laner's reputation was affected because of this, there would be endless troubles in the future. When they came to the first floor, as Su Lingchong said, the hall of Huayang Restaurant was already full of distinguished guests. Although everyone deliberately restrained their momentum, Lin Yi could still feel that no one present was ordinary. Especially those big shots who were qualified to sit on the main seat. Each of them was as deep as the abyss, as if they were sacred. In front of them, Lin Yi could only have a feeling that he was looking up at a high mountain. Among these big shots, there were many faces that Lin Yi had seen before, such as Su Yuanjing, the third elder of Towering Pavilion, Zhao Hongba, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the bald elder who guarded the back mountain hall, and Ram Jie, whom he had dealt with before, were also among them. Lin Yi even saw an old acquaintance among them, Hong Zhong of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This was quite out of Lin Yi's expectation, but after thinking about it, it was reasonable. As the full agent of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the North Island, it was natural for Hong Zhong to be close to the top management of the three pavilions. What's more, no matter his identity or status, he was not under the elders of the three pavilions, so he was naturally qualified to occupy a main seat. However, although Lin Yi was an acquaintance of him, he made friends with him as Lin too. Now, Lin Yi appeared in person, so Hong Zhong might not be able to recognize him. With the appearance of Shanghai Laner, the people who were still greeting each other instantly focused their eyes on the protagonist of today's birthday party. They all smiled, and there was a bit of amazement in their eyes. As the protagonist, Shanghai Laner's dress was no different from usual today. She did not deliberately dress up, nor did she deliberately decorate herself, but even so, it was still difficult to conceal her natural beauty. Under the deliberately created dreamy atmosphere of the audience, she was like a fairy descending to the world, dazzling and dazzling. However, while everyone's eyes were focused on Shanghai Laner, there were still many people who noticed Lin Yi who came down from behind her. After a slight daze, there was a burst of whispers. As for Lin Yi, who was a complete stranger to them, apart from old acquaintances like Su Lingchong and the Southern Skygate, the others were completely clueless. Suddenly seeing him appear together with Miss Shangguan, of course there were all sorts of guesses and discussions going on in private. At this moment, Shangguan Tianhua, who was sitting on the main seat in the middle, waved at Laner in a half-doting and half-scolding manner. "Little Laner, why don't you quickly come over and greet all the grandpas and uncles? You've made so many elders wait for you. You've really gained a lot of face today. Little junior brother, find a place to sit down first. I'll look for you later." Shangguan Laner turned her head and whispered to Lin Yi. Then, she brought the little curly bear with her. She excitedly trotted over to him. When Su Lingchong saw this scene from afar, he couldn't help but be infuriated to the point that he was burning with rage. After seeing every little action of Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi, he felt that the two of them were doing something sneaky, which was intolerable. To think that I thought this little girl was pure and cute, pure and inviolable. I didn't expect her to be such a slut with a unique taste. I'm really King blind. Su Lingchong fiercely spat on the ground. A bold plan quietly took shape in his mind. No matter what the reason was, he could not let Shanghai Laner escape from his palm. Absolutely not. For this, he would not hesitate to use any means and take a little risk. Currently, the Great Hall was filled with a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. Even though there were some irreconcilable grudges between the various major figures present, none of them could reveal any of it. At the very least, in front of everyone, they had to temporarily force themselves to smile. After all, they had to give face to a super big shot like Shangguan Tianhua, and they had no choice but to give him face. In the birthday banquet, other than letting the many big shots gather together to exchange greetings and build up their friendship, there was also an indispensable highlight according to the usual practice. Today was no exception under Su Lingchong's arrangement, and that was to present gifts to the main character of the birthday banquet, Shanghai Laner. According to the status and strength of each other, everyone present gave gifts to Shanghai Laner in succession. This was not only to express their sincerity, but at the same time, it was also the best opportunity to show off their respective strengths. Inevitably, the birthday banquet would eventually more or less degenerate into a grand gathering for everyone to compare. The rarer and more precious gifts in hand represented the greater power of the person. In the future, their position in the eyes of many big shots would naturally be higher. As for those slightly shabby and ordinary gifts, they could not be taken out at all. Even if they were taken out, they would only make a fool of themselves. But this time, under Su Lingchong's deliberate arrangement, not only did they need to give gifts in front of everyone, but they even specially rented 3 appraisal experts from the major chambers of commerce to comment on each gift in public. To put it nicely, it was a birthday appraisal meeting. In this way, the atmosphere of competition at the scene was much stronger than before. After listening to Su Lingchong's announcement, the expressions on everyone's faces were either happy or sad, which could be described as wonderful. The top big shots of the North Island were gathered together, and this was an extremely rare opportunity. Everyone wanted to stand out on such an occasion and leave a deep impression on the many big shots, yet no one wanted to lose face at such a time. Once they left behind a stingy evaluation, then they would complain incessantly. If they knew there was such a segment earlier, then it was reckoned that everyone present would absolutely spare no effort to present the best rare and precious treasures. If they were able to leave a good impression on the many big shots, then it wouldn't be a loss no matter how much they spent. But unfortunately, when Su Lingchong sent the invitations to them, he'd done something in the process and treated them differently. Those who had a close relationship with the Su clan received a reminder at the same time they received the invitation, whereas those who didn't have a good relationship with the Su clan or even had a bad relationship with the Su clan were completely unaware of this. It was even to the extent that they were deliberately misled to think that the birthday banquet this time was just a formality, and there was utterly no need to take the trouble to prepare any precious gifts. Thus, those who received the reminder could show their faces and stand out, whereas those who were deliberately misled would truly be in a tragedy this time. They could only wait in perturbed torment as they waited for themselves to become the laughingstock of everyone present. Chapter 3989. In a sense, neglecting this birthday banquet was equivalent to neglecting the Shangguan First Young Miss, and neglecting the Shangguan First Young Miss was equivalent to neglecting the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shangguan Tianhua. The dangers involved were not something that could be described clearly with just a few words. Chong'er, you did well today. In the future, when the Su family is in your hands, I can be a little more at ease. In the process of presenting the gift, Su Yuanjing deliberately got up and walked to the side, nodding approvingly at his grandson. In his view, although Su Lingchong's little tricks were still considered immature, as long as he had this awareness, he would not be too far away from supporting the future of the Su family. Thank you for your praise, grandfather. I will definitely continue to work hard to protect the future of the Su family. Su Lingchong was immediately overjoyed by the praise. Taking over the Su family had always been his long-cherished wish. Today, he was able to obtain the approval of his grandfather, Su Yuanjing. which proved that he was a big step closer to this goal. Su Yuanjing laughed happily and said, "However, Chong'er, you must firmly remember that schemes are only a small way. If you want to take charge of big things, you must grasp the key people. Otherwise, no matter how hard you work, it will be in vain." After saying that, the old man pointed at Laner, who was intimately snuggling up to Shangguan Tianhua. Su Lingchong nodded and clenched his fists meaningfully. "Grandfather, don't worry. She will definitely not escape from the palm of your grandson's hand. Definitely not. It's great that you have this confidence. Don't let grandfather down." Su Yuanjing patted him on the shoulder and turned back to the main seat. Su Lingchong took a deep breath. When he looked at Laner in the distance again, there was a hint of coldness and cruelty in his eyes. If it was before today, if Laner still had a goddess-like position in his heart, then after what had happened just now, this goddess had quickly degraded into a slut who could be used by anyone. And if it was just to deal with such a slut, there was naturally no need to be too polite. At this time, the gift-giving session was coming to an end. Kong Mingming said eagerly, "Young Master Su, can I take out my gift now?" Su Lingchong nodded slightly. This was the plan that he had discussed with Kong Mingming in advance. He immediately came forward and introduced on her behalf, "Dear elders and friends, next is to present the birthday gift to junior sister Laner. He is the new deacon from our welcome pavilion, Kong Mingming." Kong Mingming quickly raised his head and puffed out his chest, pretending to be calm as he slowly opened the wooden box in his hand. There was an elixir carefully placed inside. Everyone present couldn't help but discuss spiritedly. Chapter 3990. Ugh, this traitorous Xiao Bai. Shanghai Laner was speechless. Now, she didn't have to worry about what excuse she could use to get out of the situation. She had to think of a way to smooth things over for Linny. However, the reaction of the audience was far beyond Shanghai Laner's expectations. Not only was there no ridicule as she had imagined, but instead, there was a collective gasp. Shanghai Laner was stunned. With the identity and status of the audience, everyone was knowledgeable. What kind of rare treasures hadn't they seen before? However, Lin Yi's gift was able to shock them all. This was a bit too much. However, when Shanghai Laner saw what was in the spiritual jade box, even she couldn't help but exclaim in disbelief. At this moment, in the spiritual jade box, there were two elixirs. Just like Kong Mingming's, they were both foundation establishment elixirs. However, the difference was that the two elixirs given by Lin Yi were covered with layers of mesmerizing elixir halo. They were actually the legendary and extremely rare Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment Elixirs. Supreme Grade Foundation Establishment Elixirs were miraculous elixirs that only the legendary super elixir refiners like Zhang Liju could concoct. In the entire North Island Alchemy Hall, there might not be a single alchemist who could refine the Supreme Grade Foundation building pill. If an elixir refiner like Kong Mingming, who could concoct top-grade foundation establishment elixirs, could be regarded as an elite, then an elixir refiner who could concoct supreme-grade foundation establishment elixirs would undoubtedly be at the master level. For a moment, no one in the audience spoke. Even Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming, who deliberately provoked this scene to make a fool of Lin Yi, were shocked speechless. This is fake, right? Kong Mingming couldn't help but mutter. Spending 10 days and 10 nights to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, this was already the limit of what he could achieve, and this was even with the help of Su Lingchong. Wanting to refine a high-grade foundation building pill, in his opinion, was simply impossible. At least it was absolutely not an extravagant hope for an alchemist of his level. But Lin Yi, this guy, from the secular world until now, had been in contact with him for so long, it could be said that they knew each other inside out. He had never heard of this guy having such a heaven-defying talent in alchemy, and even more did not believe that this guy had such a profound attainment in alchemy. How could it be possible for him to suddenly refine a top-grade foundation-building pill? No matter how he thought about it, it was not scientific at all. It did not make sense at all. As soon as Kong Mingming's words came out, the audience couldn't help but burst into an uproar. If these two top-grade foundation-building pills were made by a big shot here, it would not be surprising, but now it was made by a newcomer. This was too shocking. Two top-grade foundation-building pills, not to mention that they were priceless. Even if they were calculated according to the lowest price in the past, they were worth at least thousands of spirit jades. This was not something that an ordinary newcomer could afford. Su Lingqiang was also immersed in shock, but when he heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. He gave Kong Mingming a look and said, "Junior brother Kong, you are an alchemist, and you have personally refined the foundation-building pill. You have the most right to say whether this kind of pill is real or fake. Today is such an important occasion, we can't let some people with ulterior motives fool us. It's better to check carefully." Seeing that the big shots present had no intention of stopping him, Kong Mingming nodded knowingly and immediately walked over. Before the little curly bear could react, he snatched the foundation-building pill together with the spirit jade box. At this time, Shanghai Laner wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Kong Mingming pretended to pick up one of the pills and looked at it, and then showed an expression of, as expected. He sneered and said loudly, "I knew that this guy Lin is not a good person. When he was in the secular world, he only knew how to fake things. Now he actually dares to do this. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Everyone, don't be fooled by him. These two so-called top-grade foundation-building pills are actually fake pills with a shell." After that, in the exclamation of the audience, Kong Mingming suddenly threw the two pills on the ground, and without saying a word, he stepped on them. After stepping on them, he didn't forget to twist them hard. Looking at this scene, Lin couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Kong Mingming really can't change his ways. He had already done the same thing when he was in the secular world. He didn't expect that he didn't learn his lesson now. Now that the occasion was changed, he actually did the same thing again. The audience suddenly fell into a dead silence. Many people at this moment looked at Lin Yi with a bit of hostility. They were all big shots. If they were really cheated by a lowly villain like Lin Yi with fake pills under their noses today, they would become a laughing stock in the future. Su Lingqiang and Kong Mingming secretly smiled at each other. Anyway, Lin Yi was alone here, and there wouldn't be any big shots who would stand up for him. Even if these two top-grade foundation-building pills were originally real, they were now fake. The two pills had been stepped on by Kong Mingming to pieces and were beyond recognition. Unless it was a very knowledgeable expert who got hold of it and carefully examined it, ordinary people wouldn't be able to tell whether it was real or fake. But for these big shots present, who would risk losing face to come and personally examine it for the sake of Lin Yi, who they didn't know? This move was called taking the initiative to gain the upper hand. As long as no one stood up for Lin Yi, then there would be no evidence. However, just when the two of them thought that they had succeeded and were ready to enjoy Lin Yi's sullen expression, a figure suddenly appeared beside Kong Mingming like the wind. He pushed Kong Mingming away and picked up the pill that was stepped on by his foot to carefully examine it. Lin Yi was originally going to get up and settle it himself, but after seeing this person appear, he calmly sat back down with a smile. The person who rushed out to examine the pill could be considered an acquaintance of Lin Yi. It was the spiritual flower manager from the Pill Hall's spiritual medicine nursery. Spiritual flower manager, what are you doing? I already said that this is a fake pill. Kong Mingming suddenly felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but sweat profusely. He hurriedly wanted to stop it. He really didn't expect that there would actually be someone who would come to personally examine the pill. Fake pill? The spiritual flower manager was instantly amused and sneered. Whether it's the color, the medicinal smell, the pill halo, or the texture, which one of them can you tell that this is a fake pill with an outer shell? Such top-grade foundation-building pills, you actually dared to step on two of them. You are King wasting the pill. Someone like you is worthy of being an alchemist? Chapter 3991. No, Kong Mingming still wanted to rack his brain to argue, but the spiritual flower manager did not give him the chance. He raised his hand and slapped him, sending him flying. Bang! In front of the spiritual flower manager, Kong Mingming could not resist at all. He was slapped so hard that he flew for dozens of feet. Then, He fell to the ground in a sorry state and could not get up for a long time. Faced with this sudden scene, everyone present was stunned. However, no one, including the important people present, said anything. Not only did they not reprimand the spiritual flower manager for attacking so brazenly, but the way they looked at Kong Ming Ming was a little more angry, as if he was played in public. This spiritual flower manager was not as simple as being the head manager of the spirit medicine nursery. Not only did he have a strong background, but he was also a recognized genius in alchemy. As long as he had the heart, he would be a strong competitor for the next deputy leader of the Pill Hall. The reason why he sat in the position of the spirit medicine nursery's head manager, which was not very prominent in the eyes of outsiders, was because he had a special interest in cultivating elixirs. Secondly, it could be regarded as a rotation experience. After all, only after he had experience in all the important positions, he would have a deep understanding and control of the entire Pill Hall. Naturally, he would be more qualified and confident to compete for the leader of the Pill Hall in the future. If it was someone else who rashly questioned Kong Ming Ming, the important people present might not believe it. However, since it was the spiritual flower manager, the weight of his words was naturally far greater than that of a new alchemist like Kong Ming Ming. It was clear who they should listen to and who they should believe. After slapping Kong Ming Ming, the spiritual flower manager took out a clean handkerchief from his chest and carefully picked up the 2 dregs that had been stepped on. He did not miss a single one. After that, the spirit flower manager spoke to Lin Yi from afar. Lin Yi, I happen to have 2 foundation pills here as well. The quality isn't as good as yours, but it's still a rare item. What do you think about exchanging them for yours? Lin Yi's 2 foundation building pills were just crushed by Kong Ming Ming. They were a little dirty and ugly. If one did not dislike them, they could still be used normally. However, it was a little inappropriate to continue using them as a birthday gift for Shangguan Laner. The spirit flower manager's suggestion was a timely help to Lin Yi, and it wasn't a small favor at all. However, Lin Yi smiled and said, I have already given these 2 pills to Miss Shangguan. She is the owner of the pills. Spiritual flower manager, you seem to have asked the wrong person. When the spiritual flower manager heard this, she smiled sweetly and said, That's true. I was confused by Kong Ming Ming. Junior sister Laner, what do you say? Shangguan Laner pouted. This was a birthday gift given to her by Lin Yi. Of course, she did not want to exchange it with someone else. However, even if the effect was not affected, it was a little disgusting to let her take the pills that had been stepped on by Kong Ming Ming. It was too much for her. All right then, I will exchange with you, senior brother Ling Hua. Shangguan Laner finally nodded and agreed. At this time, the little curly bear at the side carried a box and ran to the spiritual flower manager as if he was presenting a treasure. He lifted it up with great effort and kept crying. What do you mean? The spirit flower manager opened the box suspiciously and realized that it was the high-quality foundation building pill that Kong Xiaoming had just made. Shangguan Laner held her forehead and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Senior brother Ling Hua, it wants you to exchange this foundation building pill as well. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. This little curly bear was really cunning. The spiritual flower manager smiled and squatted down. She touched the head of the little curly bear and said, Little guy, only the best foundation building pill can be used to exchange for the best foundation building pill. The one in your hand can't be used. At best, it can only be considered a pile of dog shit. Woo-woo. The little curly bear was obviously stunned for a moment. Then, it suddenly threw the foundation building pill in its hand far away and even rubbed its paws in disgust. It gave people the feeling that it had really grabbed dog poop, which made people not know whether to laugh or cry. As for this foundation building pill, it was just as the spiritual flower manager had said. It was just like a pile of dog poop. Even though it was thrown on the ground, no one cared about it. No one even took a second look at it. Kong Xiaoming was already coughing up blood as he watched the scene unfold before his eyes. This time, his vision darkened and he almost fainted from anger. This is the result of my hard work for 10 days and 10 nights. If I put it on the market, I can sell it for at least a few hundred spiritual jades. Is it worth it to be looked down upon like this? At this time, Su Lingchong finally couldn't take it anymore. He suddenly said, "Spiritual flower manager, are you sure these 2 pills are real? Don't make a mistake and lose it. It's a small matter if you suffer a loss yourself. If you drag everyone here into becoming a laughing stock, that won't be good. What do you think?" After hearing this, the spiritual flower manager's elegant brows became slightly serious. She said coldly, "Why? Now that you've taken the position of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager, your confidence has changed? Do you even want to question my words?" These words could be said to be extremely domineering. However, everyone present seemed to be used to it. The spiritual flower manager usually looked effeminate and was a complete sissy. However, those who truly understood him knew that when it came to a critical moment, this person's domineering courage was definitely not below anyone else's. Of course, with his current status as the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he didn't look as impressive as Su Lingchong's Soaring Sky Pavilion's manager. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't dare to speak to Su Lingchong in such a tone. However, in terms of background, he was stronger than Su Lingchong. In terms of ability, he was stronger than Su Lingchong. In terms of status, other than being the head manager of the Spirit Medicine Nursery, he was also a strong candidate for the next hall leader of the Pill Hall. One should know that the Pill Hall was the same as the Law Enforcement Hall. It was one of the top among all the halls in the 3 pavilions. If he could become the hall leader of the Pill Hall, he would immediately be on the same level as Ramjia. Therefore, even if the spiritual flower manager was only a candidate, he could still look down on Su Lingchong. Even Ramjia would have to look at him differently in the future. After all, which cultivator didn't take medicinal pills? Who couldn't beg someone from the Pill Hall? At that time, one word from the Spirit Flower Hall leader would be enough to put you on the blacklist. Could you really count on Kong Mingming to refine pills for you in the future? Chapter 3992. After a long moment of silence, Su Lingchong took a deep breath to calm himself down before saying, "Steward Linghua, I'm not questioning your judgment, but if these 2 top-grade foundation building pellets are real, does everyone here still think that these precious items worth several thousand pieces of spirit jades coming from a mere clear cloud pavilion disciple like Lin Yi's hands is logical?" With that, even the supervisor of the spirit flowers had nothing to say. Equals the question that Su Lingchong mentioned was something that everyone else had as well, but after considering that it might be related to Lin Yi's privacy, there was no need to offend him. But now that Su Lingchong had asked, they could listen to Lin Yi's explanation. In fact, with the manager's testimony, there was no doubt that these 2 pills were real. The only problem that Lin Yi had to face now was how did these 2 pills come about? Su Lingchong had already said that Lin Yi and Kong Mingming were both elixirs refiners, and there was only one question that everyone wanted to know. Were these 2 pills made by Lin Yi himself? Although it was impossible for a newbie from Blue Cloud Pavilion to be able to make these pills, there was a precedent like Zhang Liju. So no matter how small the possibility was, there was still a possibility. Not to mention, the possibility of a mere clear cloud pavilion newcomer taking out 2 top-grade foundation establishing pellets was next to none. Now that the truth was laid out before their eyes, they had no choice but to believe it. "Lin Yi, aren't you going to explain it to everyone? If you can't give us a good reason, we can totally suspect that you stole it. Giving stolen goods to little sister Lan or as a birthday present is not a joke. I don't think I need to explain the consequences, right?" Su Lingchong thought that he had found Lin Yi's weakness. He laughed coldly. Under the gazes of everyone present, Lin Yi was slightly taken aback and couldn't help but fall into hesitation. According to Lin Yi's original plan, he didn't want others to know that he could refine the supreme grade foundation building pill. After all, an ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. Once this matter was spread out, it would definitely cause a huge uproar, and it was highly possible that it would lead to unpredictable consequences. With his current insignificant strength, it was very likely that he would be directly captured by some people with ulterior motives and used as an alchemy machine. This was also what he had always been thinking. The reason why there was no interaction with the Pill Hall. His strength was too low. If he was at the Golden Core stage, he wouldn't be like this. Therefore, he gave the gift to Shangguan Laner in private today in order to avoid people's eyes and ears and prevent people from spreading the news. The reason why he chose to give Shanghai Laner a supreme-grade foundation-building pill was purely out of good intentions. After all, with a woman like Morongzhan eyeing her covetously, even if Shanghai Laner was the young mistress, she would not be able to do anything to her. It was better to increase his own strength as soon as possible. To Shanghai Laner, a person who doesn't like to cultivate, the foundation-building pill, which has no side effects, was the most suitable gift. Plus, the grass of heart devouring was already guaranteed. Lin Yi didn't have to worry about not having enough foundation-building pills to use in a short period of time. Therefore, giving the 2 ready-made foundation-building pills to Shanghai Laner was not inappropriate. He didn't think that under a freak combination of factors, the fact that the 2 foundation establishment pills were exposed in front of everyone really caught Lin Yi off guard. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have given her any foundation-building pills. However, since things have progressed to this stage, it was too late to regret. There were 2 answers. Either he personally refined it, or he obtained it through other means. Both had their own pros and cons. This was a matter of life and death in the future. Before answering, Lin Yi had to think carefully. If he directly admitted that he personally refined it, the risk could be said to be extremely high. Taking a step back, even if he wasn't captured and used as an alchemy machine, Su Lingcheng would definitely hate him even more. There would only be more trouble in the future. Even though the spiritual flower could take care of him, there would always be a time when it couldn't. If he changed to another answer, saying that these 2 supreme-grade foundation-building pills were not personally refined by him, even though at first glance, it would indeed be able to avoid the risk of becoming a public enemy. However, with his identity as a newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, it was easier said than done to fabricate a legitimate story in such a short period of time. Everyone present was an experienced and knowledgeable person. No matter how hard Lin Yi racked his brains, as long as it was a lie that he made up at the last minute, there was at least a 90% chance that it would be exposed in front of everyone. It would not be any lower than this. This risk was really too great. Once the lie was exposed in front of everyone, he would be in a completely passive situation. At that time, if Su Lingcheng took the opportunity to fan the flames and suspected that the 2 supreme-grade foundation-building pills were not obtained through legitimate means, then it would really be troublesome. Perhaps the hall master of the law enforcement hall, Ramjia, would personally make a move and use the soul-searching technique on Lin Yi. It was difficult to advance, but it was also difficult to retreat. No matter what choice he made, it was extremely risky. At this moment, Lin Yi felt like he was being roasted on a stake and was suffering. In the end, Lin Yi secretly clenched his teeth and prepared to admit that he personally refined the pills. Even though this was also full of danger, it was still better than the second outcome, which was to become a superstar that received the attention of many big shots. As long as he was careful in everything he did in the future, there was always a chance that he could fight for a chance of survival. However, just as Lin Yi was preparing to lay his cards on the table helplessly, Hong Zhong, who was sitting on the main seat, suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, I can be a witness to the origin of these 2 supreme-grade foundation-building pills of young hero Lin, because these 2 pills came from the Hong Chamber of Commerce." Hearing this, everyone present was in an uproar. Even Lin Yi himself could not help but be slightly startled. However, he did not show it too much, and very soon, he hid this surprise in the bottom of his heart. Lin Yi did not expect that, without any prior communication, Hong Zhong would actually suddenly stand out to help him out of this predicament. The risk that he had to bear in this was not a little bit. After all, now that Lin Yi had appeared with his original face, in theory, Hong Zhong should not have seen him before. Even if, judging from his figure and temperament, Hong Zhong suspected that he might be the second Lin that he had dated several times, it could only be regarded as a suspicion at most, and should not be 100% sure. Under the premise that the identity could not be confirmed, Hong Zhong rashly stood out to smooth things over for Lin Yi. This could be said to be poles apart from his usual steady and shrewd style of doing things. However, it was precisely this point that displayed his unique and awesome side. Chapter 39-93. Just through the 2 ultimate-grade foundation-building elixirs and that box, he has the confidence to confirm that I am Lin Air, and he dares to stand up for me at this critical moment. This time, I really owe him a big favor. Lin, he could not help but feel grateful in his heart. At a distance of nearly 60 meters, Lin Yi and Hong Zhong looked at each other from a distance and nodded tacitly. Everything was said without words. Seeing that Hong Zhong personally came forward to testify for Lin Yi this time, even Su Lingchong was dumbfounded. Before facing manager Ling Hua, Su Lingchong at least had the idea of bowing to him on the wrist, but facing Hong Zhong, the big boss of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he really did not have the guts to question him. As the full representative of the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the North Island, in terms of power and status, Hong Zhong was almost no lower than any senior elder of the 3 pavilions. Even compared with his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, he was not inferior at all. Even if Su Lingchong had a few more guts, he would absolutely not dare to open his mouth and question Hong Zhong in front of so many big shots in such a public place. If he dared to do so, there would only be one end for him in the end, and that would be asking to be humiliated. However, not being able to question Hong Zhong face to face did not mean that he would easily let go of Lin Yi. Su Lingchong had an idea and said to Lin Yi, "Since Mr. Hong has personally come forward to testify, then I will no longer doubt the authenticity and origin of these 2 ultimate-grade foundation-building elixirs. However, I want to know, Lin Yi, as a newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, where did you get so many spiritual jades to buy these 2 ultimate-grade foundation-building elixirs?" If there was no reasonable explanation for this question, it would also be very fatal. Generally speaking, there were only 2 sources of spirit jades for newcomers. The first was the monthly salary that the welcoming pavilion gave them, but it was only a trifling piece. The second was obtained through some low-level tasks, such as going to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine and so on. Although this reward was slightly higher than the salary, it was still pitifully little. 2 top-grade foundation-building pills would cost at least several thousand spiritual jades. It was impossible for a newcomer to afford them with his meager income. Furthermore, Lin Yi was a grassroots newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Moreover, he had come from the secular world, so he had no background to speak of. Where did he get such a huge sum of spiritual jades to purchase the top-grade foundation-building pills? There was definitely something fishy about it. However, Lin Yi was burning with rage. If he had the strength and wasn't a newbie, who would dare to ask him this? Chapter 3994. They belonged to different factions. Hong Zhong was not a member of the 3 great pavilions at all, and was not under anyone's jurisdiction. Instead, many high-level cultivators asked to help him. Who would be so stupid to offend him? Now that Su Lingchong had given up, the others naturally wouldn't chase after Lin Yi anymore. Lin Yi could finally heave a sigh of relief as he successfully got through this crisis. However, Lin Yi also knew in his heart that after being targeted by Su Lingchong, he would inevitably be targeted by some people with ulterior motives. Not to mention other things. At least at this moment, the way Yuzha looked at him was a little strange. When he used the identity of Lin Air to compete with Yuzha for the Starring Stone, Hong Zhong's attitude towards him was also very polite. After that, Hong Zhong protected him several times. This was seen by Yuzha from the beginning to the end. Yuzha originally had doubts about Lin Yi. Hong Zhong's performance today became a rare piece of evidence. Who knows, from today onwards, Lin Yi's suspicion would surpass Kong Mingming's and become their #1 suspect again. Lin Yi could only smile bitterly. Coming to this birthday party today, he had gained a lot of knowledge, but it had also left behind many hidden dangers and troubles in the future. The saying enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road was really true. At this time, Shanghai Laner trotted over with the little curly bear. She moved in front of Lin Yi and suggested, "Little junior brother, there are too many blind people here. Let's go to the 3rd floor." No matter how simple Shanghai Laner was, after what happened just now, she had already seen that with Lin Yi's awkward identity appearing in such a high-end gathering where important people gathered, once he was slightly targeted, it was easy to become a target of public criticism. And in this kind of place, Although Shanghai Laner was the first miss of Soaring Sky Pavilion, the others were not weak and their background would not lose to her too much. After all, she was not Shanghai Tianhua herself. If she wanted to suppress people to protect Lin Yi like she did outside, it was not very effective. Unless her grandfather, Shangguan Tianhua, personally said something. Alas, Shangguan Tianhua hadn't even heard of Lin Yi before, and his identity was special as well. Every move he made in a situation like this would be interpreted in all sorts of ways. Why would he stand up for someone he didn't know anything about? Therefore, for Lin Yi, this could be said to be a place of trouble. Even if he had just escaped a disaster, there would be trouble sooner or later if he continued to stay here. It was better to find a place to avoid attention. For Shanghai Laner, Lin Yi was well aware of her intentions, but he still asked, "Is this okay? Little senior sister, you are also the protagonist today. Now the birthday party is only halfway through. It's not good to leave halfway, right?" Shanghai Laner smiled and said, "What's good about it? Little junior brother, you don't know this. Holding a birthday party for me is actually just a pretense. These high and mighty people have always been concerned about standing in line and power. Why would they care about whether a little girl like me is here or not?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. But thinking about it carefully, Shanghai Laner's words were also reasonable. In this kind of occasion where the big shots gathered, the protagonist could only be one thing: power. "Well, thank you, little senior sister, for your kindness." Lin Yi thought about it and nodded. Although following Shangguan Lan or like this might cause gossip and even some rumors, it was better than continuing to stay here, being despised by others for nothing, and bearing those unpredictable risks. After the two agreed, they immediately got up and prepared to go upstairs with the little curly bear. However, when they just walked to the stairs, they were stopped. With Shanghai Laner's identity, ordinary people naturally didn't dare to stop her. But at this time, the person who stopped in front of the two was the organizer of this birthday party, Su Lingqiong. "Little junior sister Lan, where are you going? The party is only halfway through." Su Lingqiong had a fake smile on his face. Su Yuanjing just reminded him that he must grab hold of this key person. Naturally, he couldn't let Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi slip away quietly. If a single man and a single woman caused any immoral things, then it would have nothing to do with Su Lingqiong anymore. "Where this young miss wants to go is none of your business." Shanghai Laner rolled her eyes at him and snorted in dissatisfaction. Before this, although she hated Su Lingqiong very much, but because of the face of a senior, she could still barely pinch her nose and feign civility. But today, after seeing Su Lingqiong's hateful face of making things difficult for Lin Yi, she felt disgusted even feigning civility with him. So, she might as well shed all pretense of cordiality and save herself from feeling disgusted in the future. Su Lingqiong couldn't help but choke. He had never been so disdainful and despised in his face, and he couldn't help but curse in his heart. F***K. This woman found a wild man, and even the tone of her speech is different. What a bitch. If it wasn't for him having misgivings about Shanghai Laner's identity, Su Lingqiong had the intention to drag this adulterous couple outside and directly chop them into pieces. But unfortunately, he couldn't. Not only could he not, he had to be patient and properly serve this young Mississippi. Otherwise, if his grandfather, Su Yuanjing, were to find out that he was despised by this young miss, then wanting to take over the Su family in the future would become a daydream. A what? This young miss hates fellows like you that have a belly full of evil tricks and a belly full of crafty schemes. Quickly move aside for this young miss. Shanghai Laner snorted angrily as she asked Su Lingqiong to move aside. The corners of Su Lingqiong's mouth twitched, and he forcefully suppressed the flames of rage in his heart as he forced a smile and said, "Junior sister, you've really misunderstood me. I suspected Lin Yi earlier because I wholeheartedly thought for you, and I was deeply afraid that you would be deceived by others. Never mind, I was misled by this kid Kong Mingming earlier, and I was indeed slightly rash and offended young hero Lin. Why don't I take this opportunity to toast a cup of wine to young hero Lin and take it as a token of apology?" As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingqiong gestured to the servant beside him to pass over a cup of wine. and he personally poured a cup for Lin Yi and himself before passing it over to Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked on coldly from the side, and he didn't extend his hand to receive it. He didn't believe that this fellow, Su Lingchong, would really be so kind and sincerely apologize to him while accompanying him in drinking. Young hero Lin, this young master is personally apologizing to you. You wouldn't be unwilling to even give this little bit of face, right? As men, we can't be so lacking in magnanimity, right? Su Lingchong laughed in ridicule, and then he seemed to have recovered from his shock as he slanted his eyes and looked disdainfully at Chen Shi. Speaking of which, young hero Lin, you wouldn't be afraid that there's poison in the wine, right? Do you really think that our Heaven Stage Island is as dirty and despicable as your secular world? So petty, you really can't see the world. Chapter 3995. Change wine glasses? Even little junior sister Lan doesn't trust your senior brother? Su Lingchong's brows raised when he heard this, and then he puckered his lips helplessly. All right, then change wine glasses. In any case, your senior brother is magnanimous, and there's nothing that can't be seen in the light. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong didn't hesitate in the slightest to do as he said, and he gave others the feeling as if there really wasn't anything fishy about this, and he was purely toasting and apologizing to Lin Yi. Lin Yi originally didn't want to drink this cup of wine from him. After all, there were all sorts of extraordinary things in the cultivation world, and it wasn't like the mortal world that only had those few medicines that everyone knew of. If Su Lingchong really wanted to add something into the wine, then even with Lin Yi's strength, it would be extremely difficult for him to notice it. If he were to fall into Su Lingchong's trap because of this, then who knew what unforeseen consequences would occur? But since Shanghai Laner had already said so, it wasn't good for him to disregard it like this, and he could only receive Su Lingchong's wine cup. Young hero Lin, this young master will drink first as a sign of respect. Please. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Lingchong directly drained the wine in a single gulp. Lin Yi brought the wine cup close to his nose and sniffed it, and besides the wine fragrance and spirit energy that filled his nose, he didn't notice anything unusual. Su Lingchong sneered endlessly in his heart when he saw this scene. How could the methods I use be so easily exposed? It's simply wishful thinking and naive to the point it's cute if you want to smell something wrong purely by relying on your nose. Lin Yi still didn't have the confidence in his heart, but since this was exchanged from Su Lingchong, then even if Su Lingchong had really added something into the wine, it would surely not be something that could kill him in a short period of time. Otherwise, even if Su Lingchong held the antidote in his hand, it was difficult to guarantee that nothing would go wrong after being delayed for a while by Lin Yi. Moreover, this was a critical occasion where great figures had converged after all. If he were to really use poison wine to cause someone's death, then Su Lingchong would have to bear the consequences. After all, Shanghai Laner could testify that the wine that Lin Yi drank came from him. Therefore, one thing that Lin Yi could be sure of was that even if something was added to the wine, it would at most be some unorthodox supplementary ingredients. There would be some effect in a short period of time, but it would definitely not be too strong, nor would it leave any obvious after effects. Su Lingchong was not an idiot. Lin Yi could even further speculate that if this fellow really wanted to add something, then the effect would probably not be easily noticed from the beginning to the end. It was very likely that even if the effect took effect, it would be misunderstood as drunkenness. What? Young hero Lin still doesn't dare to drink it? This is slightly not giving this young master any face, and it's too embarrassing, right? Su Lingchong urged right away when he saw Lin Yi not moving for a long time. Since you're begging me to drink it, I'll drink it. At this moment, the gazes of the surrounding people had already been attracted over. Lin Yi couldn't continue to refuse and hesitate, so he immediately smiled and drank the wine in the cup. Very good, you can pick up and let go. This is the tolerance that a true man should have. Su Lingchong smiled proudly without a trace. He turned around and poured another cup for Lan and said, Junior sister Lan today is your birthday. I, as your senior brother, should toast you a cup. Junior sister, you won't refuse, right? Lan originally didn't want to bother with this annoying fellow, But when she saw Shanghai Tianhua and Su Yuanjing looking over from afar, she couldn't just brush her sleeves and leave. She could only take the wine cup patiently and said with a pout, "Let me make it clear first. I'm not giving you face. I'm giving face to your grandfather. You don't have any face in my eyes." This bitch. Su Lingchong was infuriated by these words. In the past, when Linny hadn't appeared, although Lon sometimes had the temper of a young miss in his eyes, her flaws couldn't obscure her beauty. But now, after he saw her colluding with Lin Yi, the more he looked at her, the more he felt that this woman was a scoundrel who could sleep with anyone. They were a pair of dogs. Yes, yes, junior sister Lon is a proud daughter of the heavens. Not anyone can give face to her. Su Lingchong nodded and smiled apologetically, but the corners of his mouth unconsciously curved into a sly arc. No matter what you say, as long as you drink this cup of wine, you won't have the final say in the future. Shanghai Laner snorted and couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Su Lingchong anymore. She immediately raised her head and was about to drink the wine. Anyway, this was a special spiritual wine. She had drunk a lot since she was young, so drinking a few cups wasn't a problem at all. Lin Yi, who was at the side, was a little worried. Su Lingchong's actions clearly showed that there was something fishy. If it was as he expected, something must have been added to this spiritual wine. With Lin Yi's strength and willpower, he didn't care much about it. But if it was put on Shanghai Laner, then it was hard to say. However, just when Su Lingchong's scheme was about to succeed, the little curly bear suddenly jumped onto Shanghai Laner's body. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was unprepared, he actually licked the wine clean in one gulp. "Little White, you little drunkard." Shanghai Laner instantly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although this scene was unexpected, it was within reason. It wasn't the first time that the little curly bear had secretly drunk spiritual wine. In fact, this fellow had already displayed the potential of a drunkard since he was young. Ever since he fell into a wine jar and became drunk, the little fellow would steal any wine he saw. He had never let go of a chance like this, so of course, he wouldn't let go of such an opportunity before him. This time, Su Lingchong was dumbfounded. He had tried so hard to make Shangguan Lan drink the spiritual wine, but in the blink of an eye, it went into the stomach of the little curly bear. What the hell was this? All right, now Little White has drunk it on behalf of me. You're fine now, right? Quickly make way for me. Shanghai Laner raised her head towards Su Lingchong. This can't be counted, right? Su Lingchong quickly poured another glass of wine and wanted to make Shanghai Laner drink it. Unfortunately, Miss Shangguan didn't even look at him. She directly called out to Lin Yi, bypassed him, and went upstairs. F***CK. Su Lingchong could only curse gloomily. If it wasn't for this kind of public occasion, he would even have the intention to force Shanghai Laner to drink it. Although this plan was an impromptu idea, whether it could be successfully completed or not was related to his future. He couldn't allow any mistakes. However, now that Shanghai Laner had already brought Linny upstairs, no matter how Su Lingchong lowered his head and stamped his feet, it was already futile. At this time, if he forcefully followed up and forced Shanghai Laner to drink, it would be too conspicuous. He was afraid that everyone present would start to suspect his motives. Chapter 3996. A wisp of a sinister sneer flashed on the corners of Su Lingchong's mouth as he withdrew a small yellow pill from his bosom and stuffed it into his mouth without saying a word. This was precisely the antidote that he'd prepared for himself in advance. Before he'd apologized to Linny earlier, he'd already expected that Linny wouldn't trust him, and it was only logical that he'd brought up the matter of exchanging wine cups. Thus, he'd added supplementary ingredients into the entire jug of spirit wine that he'd prepared. No matter who drank it, no matter which cup of wine they drank, they would surely fall for it, and there was no possibility of escaping. Just as Linny had speculated earlier, the supplementary ingredients that Su Lingchong had added into the spirit wine weren't some potent ingredients with obvious effects. After all, the current situation was too sensitive. It had to be known that the great figures seated downstairs were all people with remarkable abilities, and even the slightest bit of unusual movements wouldn't be able to escape their perception. Thus, even if it was a drug that was added into the wine, it had to be a drug that wouldn't cause others to suspect it. The drug that Su Lingchong used this time was called immortal intoxication, and it was a type of simple hallucinogenic drug. During the period when the drug took effect, it would cause one's mind to be in a trance, and thus achieve the same effect as drunkenness. According to legend, this was a type of drug that specifically targeted at confusing the divine sense of cultivators. Although its effects weren't considered violent and wouldn't cause death, and there weren't any side effects afterwards, but when the drug took effect, even immortals wouldn't be able to endure it. Thus, it had the name of immortal intoxication. Immortal intoxication was colorless and tasteless, and its effects were exactly the same as drunkenness. Thus, even if Laner and Lin Yi were to drink it in front of so many great figures, and even if the drug took effect, it wouldn't arouse any suspicions. It was even to the extent that the person involved might not be able to notice it. This was the unique point of immortal intoxication. Perhaps this effect wasn't formidable, but if it was placed in some special situations, it was extremely practical and practically didn't carry any risks. Just like right now, it was a superb weapon to help Su Lingchong succeed. After the drunk immortal was taken with the spirit wine, it would slowly take effect over a period of time, and the medicinal effect would gradually increase from weak to strong. This was like the process of boiling a frog in warm water. When the medicinal effect reached its peak, even the gods would not be able to withstand it, let alone a mere Lin Yi. According to Su Lingchong's original plan, before Shanghai Laner and Lin Yi went upstairs, he would make them drink the immortal drug. This way, when the effects of the drug were at its strongest, both of them would be in a trance. At that time, if he wanted to do anything, it would be completely up to him, young Master Su, and it would be effortless. But now, Lin Yi had drunk the drunk immortal, but Shanghai Laner had not. If Su Lingchong wanted to smoothly execute his next opportunity, he would have to spend a little more effort. Fortunately, Shanghai Laner's strength was weak. With the strength of Su Lingchong's foundation establishment great perfection, it was really easy to deal with her without leaving a trace. Moreover, he could guarantee that he wouldn't expose any clues. While Su Lingchong was scheming and preparing for the next step, Lin Yi followed Shanghai Laner to the third floor. Although he had been carefully feeling every change in his body, he still didn't feel any obvious abnormality. Lin Yi couldn't help but mutter in his heart. There were only two possibilities to explain this. Either Su Lingchong didn't drug her, or he really did drug her, and the drug was just as he had speculated. The medicinal effect wasn't fierce or fatal. Just as Lin Yi was muttering, the little curly bear next to him began to act up. The little guy stumbled, swayed his body, and jumped up and down everywhere. When he saw a table, he would climb, and when he saw something, he would smash it. He had the posture of a child who had gone berserk. Lin Yi looked at this scene dumbfounded. He had never seen the little curly bear be so violent. He couldn't help but be speechless and asked curiously, "What's wrong with it?" Shanghai Laner, on the other hand, had an expression as if she was used to it. She shrugged and said, "What else can it be? This little guy is acting crazy because of the alcohol. In the past, every time he secretly drank wine, he would be like this. But today is a little strange. Why is it like this after just one cup? In the past, he would drink a lot, but his alcohol tolerance isn't so bad." Hearing this, Lin Yi shook his head thoughtfully. No matter how good the little guy's alcohol tolerance is, it also depends on what kind of wine it drinks. Even if it can drink 1,000 cups and not get drunk, there are some wines that it will get drunk after drinking only 1 cup. What kind of wine is it drinking? Xiaobai used to drink spiritual wine, so there's no difference. Shanghai Laner seemed to understand but didn't understand. Lin Yi smiled and didn't speak. He walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. He began to circulate his mental cultivation method to get rid of the effect of the spiritual wine he just drank. Through the performance of the little curly bear, Lin Yi could now be 100% sure that the situation he had just speculated was completely correct. Su Lingchong really added supplementary materials to the spiritual wine. The endurance of the little curly bear was far worse than that of a cultivator, so the effect of the medicine took effect so quickly. If it was Lin Yi himself, It should take a while for the effect to take effect. No matter what, as long as it was not a violent and fatal poison, Lin Yi had a way to deal with it calmly. He himself was a healing master, and being poisoned was also a kind of internal injury. However, Lin Yi soon discovered that although the medicine in his body was not violent and fatal at all, it was continuous. Every time it felt like it could be easily removed, but every time it came back immediately. After a long time, there was no sign of it being eradicated. This thing is really hard to deal with. Lin Yi shook his head, speechless. He'd always been confident that he'd be able to recover quickly no matter how heavy his injuries were. But this little medicine that wasn't even close to being fatal was like a sticky plaster that wouldn't go away no matter how hard he tried, leaving him helpless. Lin Yi still didn't know that he was in drunk immortal at the moment. Even gods could only get drunk. How could it be so easy to get rid of it? However, even if he couldn't completely remove the medicine in a short time, Lin Yi must try his best. This way, he could still control the situation in his body and not go crazy like the little curly bear. If nothing unexpected happened, Su Lingqiong should take action soon. Otherwise, he couldn't just put some medicine to help him get drunk. Little junior brother, what are you doing? Seeing Lin Yi's weird look, Shanghai Laner couldn't help but ask. Nothing, I can't handle the alcohol, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Lin Yi smiled noncommittally. Get rid of the alcohol? Little junior brother, you just drank a cup and you can't handle the alcohol? How are you going to socialize with these old foxes in the future? It seems that little senior sister has to get you a few jars of top-grade spirit wine in the future so that you can practice well. Shanghai Laner still didn't understand the reason and giggled. Chapter 39-97. While they were talking, the little curly bear had already turned the place upside down. Although this little guy had no strength, when he was drunk, his destructive power was really not to be underestimated. In the blink of an eye, he had already demolished half of the house. If it went on like this, the whole third floor of Huayang restaurant would probably fall. Seeing the little curly bear picked up the giant scissors used to trim the giant bonsai in the house and waved it around, and it might hurt itself if it was not careful, Shanghai Laner had no choice but to catch up with it and comfort it. However, before she could catch up with it, her neck was immediately hit by a knife. Her eyes rolled up and she directly fainted. At the same time, this person didn't even let the little curly bear go. He was kicked to the corner. At this moment, Lin Yi, who was meditating in the distance, couldn't help but twitch his eyelids when he saw this scene. At the same time, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, showing a trace of, as expected, smile. The person was Su Lingqiong. Young hero Lin, you probably didn't expect that we would meet again so soon, did you? Su Lingqiong kicked the little curly bear aside, then glanced at Shangguan Laner, who was unconscious on the ground, and sat on a large chair with a greedy look in his eyes, with the posture of a superior. Lin Yi raised his head and looked at him. He imitated the little curly bear and shook his head. His eyes were absent-minded, and he didn't answer. Su Lingqiong suddenly laughed. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Young hero Lin just drank wine, and now you should be in a daze, right? A bumpkin from the secular world, like you should have never drunk such high-grade spirit wine. Do you think all spirit wines have such a strong aftertaste? Ha ha ha, drunk immortal can even put down immortals. A grassroot ant like you can taste the taste of drunk immortal before you die. It's not a waste of your life. Lin Yi still didn't respond. In Su Lingqiong's eyes, Lin Yi's mind was completely in a trance. He was barely keeping his eyelids open and maintaining the last bit of consciousness. Maybe he wouldn't be able to bear it in the next moment. Not to mention Lin Yi's insignificant strength. Even a master in the peak of Zhuji realm like Su Lingqiong couldn't bear the effect of drunk immortal. Su Lingqiong sneered, and his gaze carried lust as it swept up and down Shanghai Laner's exquisite and delicate body, and he was extremely covetous. Although Shanghai Laner looked like a little girl at first glance, and her figure was not as mature and charming as Murong Zhen's, she had a bit more of a youthful and pure temptation. Especially with the noble identity of Shanghai Tianhua's only granddaughter, even Su Lingqiong, who was a veteran of the pleasures scene, could not hold himself back at this moment. Seeing that Su Lingchong was about to touch Shangguan Laner's body, Lin Yi suddenly let out a muffled groan. He seemed to be struggling to get up, but his four limbs did not listen to him. He tried to get up a few times and fell down a few times. He was simply unable to stand firmly. Io, even after drinking the immortal drunk, you can still retain the last bit of consciousness. Young hero Lin, you really can be considered a top-notch character. This young master has really underestimated you. Su Lingchong had a ridiculing smile on his face as he walked over and squatted down in front of Lin Yi. Fine, just because of this rare performance of yours, this young master will let you die with understanding today. You, what do you want to do? Lin Yi rolled his eyes as he spoke with an unclear voice. What does this young master want to do? Isn't that something very clear? With good wine and beautiful women here, having a drunken mess is all human nature. What do you think, young hero Lin? Su Lingchong glanced complacently at the unconscious Shanghai Laner and could not help but swallow his saliva. Drunken mess. Lin Yi's heart instantly quivered. Although he had already guessed this before, hearing it personally from Su Lingchong, it was still somewhat inconceivable. If it was any other woman, Su Lingchong, young Master Su, could have as many as he wanted. But who was Shanghai Laner? She was the beloved daughter of the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. If Su Lingchong dared to touch even a strand of her hair, the only outcome would be death. But now, this fellow was actually prepared to force himself on her. Su Lingchong, this fellow, had eaten the guts of a leopard, or was his brain overflowing with sperm? Even if he was courting death, he shouldn't do it in such a way. You think it's inconceivable? You think that this young master shouldn't have such big guts? Ha ha ha. Su Lingchong laughed complacently and sinisterly pointed at Lin Yi. Young hero Lin, please rest assured. I really don't have the guts to force myself on junior sister Lan but this young master really can't bear to part with junior sister Lan So after thinking about it, I can only ask you to help me reluctantly. What kind of help? Lin Yi continued to pretend to be confused. Su Lingchong glanced at him disdainfully, got up, and walked towards Shanghai Laner. Of course it's to take the blame for this young master. Young hero Lin, you were drunken mess, and forced yourself on junior sister Lan In the end, you were discovered by this young master and killed in one move. After that, this young master can show his magnanimity, disregard the former enmity, and accept junior sister Lan who has already become a used woman. How about it? This young master's move will gain both fame and fortune, right? You're really despicable. Lin Yi was secretly shocked when he heard this. If he really followed Su Lingchong's plan, as long as he splashed dirty water on me, a dead man, there would be no evidence, and there really wouldn't be any loopholes. Despicable? Humph. Only the weak who failed will keep such ignorant and stupid words hanging on the corner of their mouths. Su Lingchong paused, turned his head, and sneered. This young master has to thank young hero Lin. If it weren't for you being so close to junior sister Lan this young master wouldn't be able to find such an opportunity and excuse. Maybe I might not be able to get close to her even after waiting for a few decades. Now, I can finally get what I want. This young master can finally be the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua, and your contribution can't go unnoticed. Ha ha ha. After that, Su Lingchong couldn't wait. He took out a small bottle of potion from his arms, turned around, and was about to pour it into Shanghai Laner's mouth. This was the immortal drunk he had prepared. Since he couldn't let Shanghai Laner drink it with the spiritual wine just now, he could only force it on her now. Although she had been knocked unconscious now, she might wake up later. It was safer to let her be in a trance. With a ferocious and wild smile on his face, after drinking the immortal drunk, Su Lingchong pulled up Shanghai Laner's belt with one hand and was about to undress her. He had imagined this action for many years, and he had practiced it very skillfully on other women. It was true that there were few female cultivators in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, but with his identity, it was very easy for him to find a few women to play with. He didn't need to ask at all, and Lu Tianyu and other people would take the initiative to do it for him. Chapter 3998. He watched helplessly as Su Lingchong pulled open his belt with one hand and Shangguan Laner's body was about to appear in front of him without any obstruction. Finally, Lin Yi, who had been accumulating power for a long time, suddenly exploded. With Su Lingchong's foundation establishment Great Circle strength, under normal circumstances, Lin Yi had almost no chance of winning against him, unless it was like last time when he was dealing with Nan Tianyong, where Lin Yi threw a super true chi bomb at his face. Lin Yi originally didn't have such an opportunity. If he didn't have the drunk immortal, Su Lingchong might have killed him right away and then splashed the dirty water on the dead body, ending all troubles once and for all. However, precisely because he believed too much in the effects of the drunk immortal, Su Lingchong simply didn't think that Lin Yi would actually be able to explode and fight at this time. In addition, at this moment, his entire mind was focused on Shanghai Laner. By the time he reacted, Lin Yi had already rushed behind him and was only a step away. When Su Lingchong finally sensed the threat behind him and his heart thumped, Lin Yi had already pressed the true chi bomb towards the back of his head. Taking advantage of the time when the drunk immortal was forced out, Lin Yi also conveniently condensed a true chi bomb. Although because of the time limit, it wasn't as exaggerated and abnormal as the one he used against Nan Tianyong last time. If it really exploded on his face, its power also couldn't be underestimated. Lin Yi's movements could already not be said to be slow. The strength of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was already displayed to the extreme by him. In this short gap of time that couldn't even be considered as short, Su Lingchong unexpectedly arrived first despite moving later, turning around and grabbing towards his face. "You actually dare to sneak attack this young master. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Su Lingchong disdainfully sneered. The imposing manner of a strong expert was undoubtedly displayed. Lin Yi was secretly shocked in his heart. Although Nan Tianyong, a peak late-stage foundation establishment stage expert, was basically defeated by his hands, he actually didn't know how strong an expert of this level was. But now, he finally saw what was called the foundation establishment Great Circle. Although Su Lingchong was born as a young master, his personal strength was not inferior to his illustrious status. If the two of them were to fight one-on-one, even with Lin Yi's confidence, he had to admit that he was no match for this young Master Su. He might not even be able to endure a single exchange. But now, Lin Yi had been preparing the true chi bomb for a long time, and he had suddenly launched it from the enemy's back when the enemy was unprepared. But in the end, he still didn't succeed. Fortunately, Lin Yi was already prepared for this. Taking advantage of Su Lingchong's grasp, he pushed the true energy bomb into his opponent's hand. Insignificant skill. Su Lingchong curled his lips in disdain. He had never seen a move like the true chi bomb before. He thought that it was just a knockoff martial skill that he had never seen before. It was not worth mentioning because he could catch it with one hand. However, as soon as the true energy bomb entered his hand, Su Lingchong's expression immediately changed. The powerful true energy contained within it caused even a peak foundation establishment expert like him to be secretly shocked. More importantly, at this moment, the huge mass of true energy in his hand was already ready to move. It seemed like it was about to explode. Only now did Su Lingchong realize that he had been tricked by Lin Yi. This mass of true energy was not the knockoff martial skill that he had imagined. Instead, it was a downright hot potato. "You should be very clear about the power of this Dan firebomb that I secretly learned from you, right? It is enough to raze this Huayang residence to the ground. If you don't want to make a big deal out of this and get brainwashed by those big shots downstairs, young Master Su, you better think of a way quickly. Otherwise, the consequences will be hard to say." Lin Yi quickly dodged and retreated. Only then did he speak calmly. Before he let go of the true energy bomb, he did not dare to detonate it. After all, the distance between the two of them was too close. If he detonated it, both of them would be injured. However, Lin Yi's strength was obviously weaker than Su Lingchong's. Although he could recover afterwards, the opponent could kill him while he was healing. Despicable small fry. Su Lingchong gnashed his teeth and cursed. However, he could only temporarily let Lin Yi go. He braced himself and first got rid of the true energy bomb in Lin Yi's hand. Just as Lin Yi had said, if he allowed this true energy bomb to explode, then not only would his plan to force himself on Lin Yi become a bubble, even if he wanted to pour dirty water on Lin Yi, it would be very difficult for people to completely believe him. Because at that time, Shanghai Laner would definitely not stand on his side. Therefore, he could only follow Lin Yi's plan and first get rid of the true energy bomb in his hand. Only then could he take the next step. Didn't you just say that being despicable is the stupid thing of weaklings? Lin Yi sneered. Their strengths were completely unbalanced. If he did not plan this way, he would not be able to deal with a person like Su Lingqiong. Su Lingqiong snorted coldly. He had no time to waste his breath on Lin Yi. Holding the true energy bomb in his hand, his entire body abruptly erupted with an incomparably powerful aura. The strength of a foundation establishment perfection stage expert was instantly urged to the limit, and layers of true energy firmly wrapped around the true energy bomb in his hand. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the true energy bomb finally exploded. However, under Su Lingqiong's full control, it did not spread out. Its power was actually completely blocked by his true energy, as expected of a foundation establishment perfection stage expert. Such strength really caused others to be dumbstruck. Lin Yi sighed inwardly, but the movements of his hands did not stop. Taking advantage of the gap when Su Lingqiong was suppressing the true energy bomb, Lin Yi immediately struck out with the 23 moves of the Frenzy 8 trigrams palm towards Su Lingqiong's face. A lowly ant like you dares to compete with me? You really don't know death? Su Lingqiong originally wanted to show off, but he had only spoken halfway when he was slapped in the face by Lin Yi. Bang! At this moment, Su Lingqiong had just consumed 90% of the true energy in his body, and it was precisely at the moment when he didn't have the strength to continue. This time, he was completely caught off guard. A dignified foundation establishment perfection stage expert was struck flying by Lin Yi, and his face was badly mutilated, and he was in an extremely sorry state. Damn it! Su Lingqiong was struck by this palm to the point his body sank into the solid corner of the wall, and he repeatedly coughed up blood without end. He was unable to get up for a long time, and his eyes spat out flames as he stared fixedly at Lin Yi, wishing for nothing more than to slice Lin Yi into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. But conversely, Lin Yi's current state couldn't be considered to be good. After successively utilizing the true energy bomb and the 23 moves of the Frenzy 8 trigrams palm, the true energy within his body had been completely drained, and even the space within the jade pendant was unable to instantly replenish it. Don't forget, the medicinal strength of the immortal intoxication still remained within his body. Feeling the layers of dizziness that struck his mind, Lin Yi couldn't help but shout in his heart. Now that the true energy within his body was reduced, the effects of the immortal intoxication would immediately return. If he didn't quickly adjust his breathing and meditate, he would probably lose his mind very quickly, and this was slightly fatal. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.